Alrighty, folks, welcome on into the Central Committee stream with your host Mike from PA. We are live once again. How's everybody doing? How is everybody doing today? Hi, Mike. I missed you during the weekend. Yeah, I missed you too. I decided to go and see a movie on Sunday and hang out with people IRL instead of stream. You know, so that was my decision. I watched Mickey 17, and you know, I hate to be hypercritical. The Anti-Defamation League has surveilled left-wing activists and regularly tracks profiles and sends threat assessments of individuals and perceives a problem. Oh yeah, dude, you guys are cooked. Oh, what? You think we're cooked? I will tell you right now that every single country in the so-called Western world is cooked. My problem with the movie Mickey 17 is that it's liberal. Dude, I'm German. You get arrested for saying free Palestine? Yeah, I know. Because if there's a genocide going on, the Germans want to be a part of it. Here's fundamentally my problem with Mickey 17. It feels dated. It feels instantly. It's like watching Where to Invade Next, or like, you know, it feels like a movie made and conceptualized and written in a social and political milieu from when before Trump won. And it felt like it was out of place, out of time, and a lot of the messages of the movie, and fundamentally its resolution, I found profoundly unsatisfying. The more I think about the movie, the less I liked it, which is unfortunate because I liked a lot of the premises of it. But when I actually sit down and think about the execution of it, I didn't like it. It's a one and done for me. When I'm on the wrong side of history challenge and my opponents are Austria and Germany. Oh no, yeah, I know. Did you see the news about Venezuelans being deported under enemy of state accusations and rushed out despite judge orders, as well as Brown University H-1B kidney transplant doctor? Yeah, the institutions are failing. The institutions are failing, as I told you they would. And all those things where the Democrats are like, we can't do this, we can't do this. The Supreme Court said we can't do this. Oh, no. The Republicans came in and they said, fuck your shit. And by the way, if the Democrats did filibuster the continuing resolution, the Republicans would have just overturned the filibuster and done the continuing resolution anyway. But it would have at least forced them to do that. The reason why Democrats voted for cloture was to make sure that the filibuster stayed, so that if the Democrats ever get in power, the Republicans could filibuster again. I think one of the big problems that I'm having right now, I think, is a lot of people are just not thinking things through, especially on the left. And I don't think that that is something that people are doing. Like, and what I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. And this is going to be a large portion of the stream. Today, we're going to be covering Ethan Klein got absolutely destroyed by multiple YouTube videos. Everyone's starting to milk Ethan. You know, everybody talks about how with Hassan, the rent's due for the like centrist grifters. Well, now everyone's starting to milk Ethan Klein, but they're serious political videos, right? So on Ethan Klein's side, you have like the centrist nerd Reich, you know, commentary YouTubers who don't know anything about dick, saying, I don't know anything about politics. Oh, how dare you say I'm anti. But now everybody's starting to milk Ethan Klein. The decline has begun, because the difference between Ethan Klein and Hassan is that Hassan represents a charismatic individual in support of a strong strain of American political thought. It may not be dominant yet, but it is a strong strain of American political thought and organization. Ethan Klein represents what? Hasbara? Propaganda? For the rapidly declining in popularity Israeli state? Neoliberal centrism? Like, what the fuck is he trying? He probably couldn't even explain what his politics are. Unfortunately, I listened to the New York Times interview of Chuck, and good lord, the cognitive distance between leftist commentary of Palestine and Chuck is crazy to listen to. Oh yeah, well, I do. Hello, Mike from China. Hey, what's up? We love Chinese people here. God damn, I've been here the entire Trump presidency, and it's been enlightening to talk to Europeans and non-Western people talk about how much respect they have lost for the U.S. and how easy it is to talk to them about materialism and Marxism. It's generally been so nice to talk to others who aren't fully bogged down with anti-China communism rhetoric. Also met a lot of Mike Hassan heads out here so far. Well, yeah, of course you're going to meet people who are willing to talk about China and like normal people in China. You know what I mean? You're doing a pretty big filter there, right? But yes, your point is well made. The things that I think that we're facing right now is a kind of complete discrediting of what I would call entryism. And I don't think that people are really talking about it in a serious way. Like, some people are saying like, okay, this is the grand debate. And I would love to have a grand debate. The grand debate is around, should we reform the Democratic Party? Should we try to win power in the Democratic Party? Or should we do a dirty break? Dirty break is basically means that you try to find the opportunity to leave the Democratic Party in such a way that you do the maximum amount of damage in the hopes of supplanting the Democratic Party with a new left-wing party. So reforming the Dems is you go through the internal processes of the Democratic Party and you win power by taking it over and winning nominations in the Democratic Party, and then you lead the Democratic Party left. Or you do the dirty break, which is you leave the Democratic Party in mass in hopes of destroying it and replacing it with a new progressive, left-wing, socialist, labor, whatever party. And I think a lot of people think that we don't have time to leave the Dems, and unfortunately, you're wrong. Because reforming the Dems is not viable. Taking over the Democrats is not viable. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. But here is the problem. You're not really considering reality when you talk about taking over the Democratic Party. I have a lot of arguments here, and we can go through them all. They are very important. And I think that people who think we could reform the Dems are just not in touch with reality. So let's talk about what I mean by that. Okay, first of all, reforming the Dems requires taking control of the Democratic Party. The first problem is you're not treating neoliberal centrists as entities of their own. This is the main problem that you have. The main problem that you have is, even if we win, I'm going to grant you everything. We win all the primaries. We get 100 and some people to come in and primary Democrats all across the country. They all win, right? We take over the Democratic Party. The problem that you have is that that doesn't make the centrist Democrat neoliberals stay Democrats. This is what you don't get. They can decamp at that point. They can do the same thing I'm telling us we need to do. The centrist Democrats, led by Barack Obama, could do a dirty break of their own and start their own centrist liberal party. And the only problem is now they're the fresh party. Now they're the new party. And you have the fucking hated, twisted, wrecked Democratic Party. You're the one who has all of the baggage. You're the one who has control of a sinking ship. Except now you don't have you don't have the billionaire money. You don't have the institutional money. All the reasons you wanted to keep the Democratic Party has been fundamentally undermined. Why do I think this is a possibility? It's called France. That's exactly what happened with Emmanuel Macron. So the idea that you're just going to win the Democrats and the neoliberals are going to go along with it is wrong. We also have seen that happen in America already. For example, in Buffalo, New York. In Buffalo, New York, a progressive left-winger won the Democratic nomination for mayor. And what did the incumbent Democratic mayor do? He ran as an independent. He ran as a write-in campaign. And the Democratic Party in New York supported him over the Democratic nominee. The institutions of the Democratic Party supported him, and he was able to win because the Republicans and the Democrats united against the Democratic progressive. I have experiences in my own life. So that's number one. Number one is you're not treating neoliberal centrists like an independent, hostile entity, which they are. They will never, ever, ever line up behind you. And this is also true if you look at 2020. All of the stories that came out about how the Democratic Party was going to risk party damage to stop Bernie. They are ideologically opposed to you. And if you win the Democratic Party, I'll give you another example. DSA-led reformers took over the Democratic Party in Nevada. What did the Democrats do? They stole all the money, and the centrist Democrats in office all went and decamped the Democratic Party and left it to rot. You are not treating centrist Democrats as an ideological opponent who will not accept your lead. That is why you fail. Because you do not understand reality. You think, oh, we'll have a fair primary, and just like Bernie lined up behind Kamala, or just how Bernie Sanders and AOC lined up behind Biden, they'll do the same for us. They will not. So you're trying to win over a despised Democratic Party with a 29% approval rating for groups that will not support you, even if you win fair and square. So you're saying, hey, let's stay in the Democratic Party and try to take it over when they will not let you. Another example. If those examples aren't enough, I got more. Jeremy Corbyn. He took over the Labour Party in the UK. What happened? The internal Labour Party neoliberals did everything they could to sabotage him. They stole party money. They spent it on his ideological opponents. They didn't run the campaign that they were ordered to run. They engaged in mutiny, subterfuge, and treachery. They started up a false accusations of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, aligning themselves with Zionists to attack progressives and social justice reformers as anti-Semites, and ultimately handed the election to the Conservative Party, because of the internal sabotage and mutiny that was taking place. You guys just are fucking delusional. We can't ally with the liberals because they will not ally with us. You are just wrong. All they'll do is they'll use you. They'll say, what, you gotta vote for us over Trump? This is not something that I've come to lightly. I used to be a person who said reform the Dems, run in primaries. But unfortunately, I have personal experience of how that goes. At best, you will be able to hold a few backbench seats. That's the squad. Bernie Sanders, the squad. It doesn't matter if they're hyper popular on social media. They have no leadership position. They have no power. And like at the end of the day, you're calling for reforming the Dems when they will not be reformed. Even if we did everything right, they will betray us. So that's number 1 point. Even if you win, the centrist Democrats will not line up behind you, and they will use their power to betray you. They will use progressive votes as a mandate to betray progressive policy. So winning the Democrats isn't even plausible. And even if you do, the centrist neoliberals will leave the Democratic Party anyway, except you'll have this party that is old, that has low approval rating, that has a lot of baggage, and is just scum. And then, in the first place. The other problem is that's unlikely to occur anyway. That's unlikely to happen anyway. And I'll tell you why. Because the types of people that vote in primaries, and here's the problem with our election system right now. We have primary elections and we have general elections. The people that support us and populist leftism, which is the majority of the American people, they are much less likely to vote in primaries. So let's say the current Democratic Party is 65% progressives, 35% conservative, neoliberals. That's not true. It's actually more like 80-20. But I'm just giving you an example that will help you understand, right? The types of people that voted primaries are upscale, white, and wealthier, and more college educated. These are the types of people that are more conservative ideologically, more liberal ideologically. They identify more with the Democratic Party as an identity than they do with an ideological plan. They are the people who are NPR listeners, right? An upscale white liberal. These are the people that have the highest approval rating for the Democratic Party as a whole. They're the people that are not as open to our message. So you're literally, and the people that are, they show up in general elections when all the important questions have been decided. So you're literally structuring your political fucking strategy towards maximum failure, because a high turnout is in general elections. The highest turnout is in general elections in the presidential election year. The people that are the most disillusioned for politics, they're easiest to get in a general election presidential year. You're not winning primaries that have 20% turnout, 50% turnout. The third thing, we can't restrict corporate or super PAC money in Democratic primaries. If we started our own party, we could actually make rules against giving nominations to people that receive super PAC money, receive super PAC support, receive campaign finance support from, we could actually set our own bylaws that are different than the laws of the country. We could set bylaws which prohibit, forbid, block the use of APAC money, super PAC money. All those things. You can make a bylaw and say this person cannot receive this party's nomination if they X, Y, and Z. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed to you're allowed to deny those things influence in your primary. You don't have to allow those to happen. In Democratic primaries, AIPAC and Republican billionaires spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to select the most right-wing Democrats they can. Whereas in a new party, we could say you're not allowed to do that. And if you do, you automatically lose the fucking primary. You can do all, and I'm not saying that, all of that is how reality works. You've been so cucked by vote blue no matter who that you've never actually thought about this stuff with any depth. And the third and the final thing, and the most important thing, is the Democratic Party isn't even worth winning. The Democratic Party is unpopular. The Democratic Party is despised. So you win the Democratic Party, and all that happens is you discredit your movement. You average everyday people hate your guts. Just 7% of Americans have a very favorable opinion of the Democratic Party, the lowest number ever recorded. So you're really, I'm not saying that I'm not going to support left-wing candidates in Democratic primaries now. I will. It's called being a strategic voter. If I could get more left-wingers in elected office, I'm going to do it. But what I am saying is, as a movement, we need to begin the conversation out of the black hole that is vote blue no matter who, lesser evil voting, and start talking about how that has checkmated us from any political relevance. FC Neo Tokyo says, I'm in my 40s and have only voted for Dems my whole life. I literally never vote for them again after this. The Republicans are just evil, so unless there's a new party, I'm done. I mean, and that's exactly my point. You're not alone. If you want to send me that article again, you can. And this is what the Democrats want to run on. The abundance agenda's fundamental sleight of hand is that by unleashing the private sector from burdensome consumer protection, labor standards, and zoning regulations, American consumers might recover their lost purchasing power and living standards without the state directly tampering with workplace standards or wage levels. The private sector would supply more goods at lower costs if only it could. It hasn't panned out in Colorado, and it's unlikely to elsewhere. That is the Republican platform from 2000. That is George W. Bush's platform.
Welcome Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raju. First up this morning, a brand new exclusive CNN poll that paints a brutal reality for Democrats as they struggle to mount a unified opposition to President Trump. Americans' favorable views of the Democratic Party's brand are
hype train. Hell yeah, guys. Thank you so much.
29%.
Hey, Kelly. Thanks for the sub.
For Republicans. It is the lowest ever recorded for Democrats in CNN polling going back more than 30 years. As you can see, the party's numbers dropping a staggering 20 points in just 4 years. The CNN SRSR's poll also found 57% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters are more interested in seeing their party leaders stop the GOP agenda, compared to 42% who are more interested in cutting bipartisan deals.
Yeah, of course we should. Love Bass Odage. Thanks for the 10 gifties, Chuckies, by the way. Thanks, you, brother.
Now, this survey was taken before this week's tumultuous battle over funding the government, which resulted in one of the ugliest intra-party Democratic disputes in years, and left many in the party lobbying furious attacks at Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who ultimately reversed course and let a GOP bill funding the government become law in order to avert a shutdown. Now a bitter round of finger-pointing is taking shape after Democrats failed to get a single concession from the GOP, despite having their first piece of leverage to fight back against Trump. Now the big question, where does a party in deepening turmoil and in open warfare go from here?
I do find it hard to believe others don't see the current state of affairs within the Democratic Party and not see that this is a perfect opportunity to distance themselves politically. They have abandoned voters time and time again, burning others, and that feels betrayed by Senate Dems. They should start a... And here's the thing about starting a new party, chat. It probably won't work instantly. But here's the golden opportunity we have. Donald Trump is a lame duck. We get 2 cycles to figure this shit out. And it's very clear the Democrats are not going to resist anything Donald Trump is doing. So what's the fucking, like, what are you worried about? What are you worried about losing? The Democrats' seats that they won't use to block Trump? They just gave him a continuing resolution as he illegally undermines the federal government, as he overrules judge orders and ignores the courts. Like, at what point are you, like, what are you worried about losing? What are you worried about losing exactly? And that is the reality. And the thing is, and I want to be very clear to you, I have no interest in being the junior partner in the neoliberal coalition anymore. I'm not going to allow myself to be tricked to do a genocide, to support people like Chuck Schumer who want me dead. And just because you're too stupid to see it, that's not my problem. Yemen babies can wait on us voting every 4 years for a new party. Joe Biden bombed Yemen himself, you fucking delusional lunatic. There isn't one thing you can say that Joe Biden didn't already do. Like, that's the thing. That's what's so despicable about you liberals, is you pretend that you represent a difference, but you don't.
In a normal world, Democrats would be happy campers tonight. New polling from NBC News shows a majority of Americans are souring on Trump's policies, including 54% who say they disapprove of his handling of the economy. Trump's allies like Vice President J.D. Vance aren't faring any better, with 47% of voters having a negative view of him as well. Elon Musk is unpopular, with 51% holding negative views of America's first buddy. Again, in a normal world, this would be ripe for celebration among Democrats. But the same poll shows support for the Democratic Party is super weak. Just 27% of voters say they have positive views of their party. That's the party's lowest positive rating in NBC News polling dating back more than 30 years. So tonight, the question is, how did Democrats get to this moment? How did they get here? And it appears to stem from the fact that the party has failed to stand by its principles and so far has failed to push back against a president it claims is a threat to our democracy. Look, no one really encapsulates that more these days than Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. The New York Democrat is facing party-wide backlash after he and 9 other Senate Democrats voted Friday to support the GOP's continuing resolution, which effectively keeps the government open, but also gives more power to Donald Trump and Elon Musk. The embattled senator sat down recently for an interview with the New York Times to discuss the direction of his party. The interview, released today, did little to soothe his critics. Watch.
The Republicans would like to have some freedom from Trump, but they won't until we bring him down in popularity. I am hopeful that our Republican colleagues will resume working with us. And I talk to them. One of the places I told them to go in the gym, you know, when you're on that bike in your shorts, panting away next to a Republican, a lot of the inhibitions come off. I believe that my hard work against Trump will pay off.
Well, that supposed hard work isn't paying off. Voters are not buying it, whether he's running on a treadmill or not. Our new poll finds 65% of Democratic voters want the party to stick to their positions and push.
By the way, the compromise with Trump group. Oh, by the way, look at that chat. 65-32. That's exactly what the break I said earlier. 65% of Democratic voters being progressive, right? Remember how I said that earlier? But here's the thing with the 32%. They are doing what's known as elite signaling. Do you know what elite signaling is? It's basically Chuck Schumer. He is the leader of the Democratic Party, and he's saying to Democrats, we need to compromise with Trump. So the people who trust Chuck Schumer are saying, oh, he's the leader. He knows what he's doing. We should compromise with Trump. Now, if Chuck Schumer came out here and said, fight Trump, it would be 90-10. Okay? But because the elites, because Chuck Schumer, because Hakeem Jeffries are saying, no, we should compromise with the Republicans, the people who are elite signalers, elite signal followers, I should say, they will go behind them. And here's the reality, and this is the catastrophe that we're in, is that not only are the Democratic Party is it ineffective, but it's also causing infighting with how ineffective they are. This is why, and I think a lot of people, you know, I talk about the Whigs because they are a great example. There are other examples from the 20th century we could draw on, but I like to talk about the Whigs. The presidential election of 1848. That was the last time a Whig president won. This is Joe Biden. And the reality, and like, look at this map. Look at this map of America, of the election. Do you see how there's Whigs and, Whigs winning victories in Louisiana and Georgia and North Carolina and Florida? Like, wow, the Whigs united the South and the North. They broke out of those regional rivalries. But here's the reality, chat, is that the Free Soil Party was starting. They didn't win any states. The Free Soil Party started. They didn't win any states, but they were arguing, hey, we've got to stop spreading slavery across this continent. It's wrong. It's bad for free workers. And the Whigs were, and so you had a pro-slavery party, you had a third-party movement that was starting saying slavery is wrong and we shouldn't spread it, and you had the Whig Party, which is the, hey, why can't we all just get along? Hey, white man, why can't we all just get along? Why can't we all just get along? And the reality is that more and more people just could not ignore the slavery issue. More and more people could not ignore the slavery issue. And so the Democrats on a pro-slavery platform won. The Whig Party began to lose its ideological reason for existing. And then that brings us to 1856. And this is what you're all worried about. This is what you're all worried about. James Buchanan. Probably the absolute worst president we've ever had. The only president from Pennsylvania. He was so bad that he pretty much fucking tainted the Pennsylvania presidents. The worst president we've ever had. James Buchanan, I think, is pretty safe to say. But you see a new party, the Republican Party, and they didn't win. John C. Fremont, the first Republican nominee for president, didn't win. He lost. And the worst president America ever had won. Did you notice something, chat? The American Whig Alliance only won one state, Maryland. That's the Democratic Party of today. Democratic Party of today is a fucking joke. And it's hated by everyone. And if something like this happened, it would only win Maryland. That's exactly the same state that it would win. Maybe Virginia. And then, in 1860, the Republican Party triumphs with probably America's second best president, arguably best president. And some people, especially if you're more conservative, tend to cite Abraham Lincoln as the best president. But I would say he's our second best president. And that's not saying much because most presidents are dog shit. But you know what made Abraham Lincoln such a good president? He fought the conservatives and the reactionaries with bullets and bayonets. And for me, that earns a lot of credit. Killing a lot of white slavers in the South, that earns you a lot of bonus points, in my view. So like when we look through our history of elections, right? The Whig Party went from, 12 years later was replaced. I mean, it was literally began to be replaced almost immediately, right? You had one last Whig Party race and people just couldn't take it anymore. And they finally started to split. Millard Fillmore was the 13th president of the United States. He was the last president to be a member of the Whig Party and the last to be neither a Democrat nor a Republican. A former member of the U.S. House of Representatives, Fillmore was elected vice president in 1848 and succeeded to the presidency when Zachary Taylor died in July 1850. Fillmore was instrumental in passing the Compromise of 1850, which led to a brief truce, a battle over expansion of slavery. And this is the reality. There are things that we cannot have truces over anymore. And by the way, what happened to the Whig voters? Did they all die? Did they all disappear in a puff of smoke? What happened is, you know who was a Whig? Abraham motherfucking Lincoln. Lincoln was born into poverty in a log cabin in Kentucky and was raised on the frontier. He was self-educated and became a lawyer, Whig party leader, Illinois state legislator, and U.S. representative. Angered by the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which opened the territories to slavery, he became a leader of the new Republican Party. That's what happens. And that's what would happen. I don't think AOC will ever win the presidency as a member of the Democratic Party. I think it's physically impossible for that to happen. If she actually wanted to be president, the only way she's going to become president is just how Abraham Lincoln became president, which is saying, fuck the useless, disgusting piece of shit mainstream party that I was a part of. They're hopeless. and starting something new and fresh. That's it. I don't think she wants to be president.
So on social media,
every single politician wants to be president.
You've been urging people to call their senators, tell them to vote no on cloture, which allows the bill to go forward for a vote of just a simple majority, and to vote no on the vote for a simple majority on the Republican bill. What do you say to the counter argument of like a government shutdown hurts the country, hurts the people you represent from Queens and the Bronx?
Absolutely, and that is why House Democrats have laid out a plan, as well as several Senate Democrats laid out a plan to keep government open for another 30 days as Republicans negotiate a deal with Democrats in order to have an extended government funding bill.
But the House would have to come back into session, right?
But House Democrats are in town. We're afraid of working? Is that the problem here? That the idea that, God forbid, members of Congress have to fly back and do their jobs? Okay. Genuinely, come on.
So Chuck Schumer, I guess the Senate Democratic leader, your senator, said at this meeting that he is going to vote for cloture. He is going to vote to allow there to be a simple majority vote. You think that's wrong?
I believe that's a tremendous mistake. Yes.
Why?
I think, well, first and foremost, the American people, if anyone has held a town hall or has seen what has been happening in town halls, American people, whether they are Republicans, independents, Democrats, are up in arms about Elon Musk and the actual gutting of federal agencies across the board. This continuing resolution codifies much of this chaos that Elon Musk is wreaking havoc on the federal government. It codifies many of those changes. It sacrifices and completely eliminates congressional authority in order to review these impulsive Trump tariffs that he's switching on and off. And on top of that, for folks who are concerned about effectiveness in government, this Republican extreme spending bill removes all of the guardrails and all of the accountability measures to ensure that money is being spent in the way that Congress has directed for it to be spent. This turns the federal government into a slush fund for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It sacrifices congressional authority, and it is deeply partisan. And so to me, it is almost unthinkable why Senate Democrats would vote to hand the few pieces of leverage that we have away for free when we've been sent here to protect Social Security, protect Medicaid, and protect Medicare.
You have expressed opposition to government shutdowns in the past. Here's your very first speech on the House floor.
It is not normal to shut down the government when we don't get what we want. It is not normal for public servants to run away and hide from the public that they serve. And it is certainly not normal to starve the people we serve for a proposal that is wildly unpopular among the American people.
Now, I get that you hate this continuing resolution. You don't think it's a good bill, but the alternative is likely a government shutdown.
Well, the alternative is to agree on a 30-day stopgap to keep government open as negotiated. The proposal is in front of the House. The proposal is on the Senate. Republicans had time to seek Democratic votes, and we can extend that time for them to seek that vote. Once again, we can come back. We can fly back. We can vote on this. We can get a stopgap measure, extend the amount of time to negotiate while we figure out a solution here for the American people. And I also agree, again, I maintain that position that government shutdowns, we can keep the government open with a 30-day clean CR. And on top of that, I also maintain the position that government officials and public servants should not be hiding from the public the way that Republicans are hiding and being instructed to not host town halls right now because of the outrage among the American public around their attempts to cut Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare.
My understanding is that your other senator, another Democrat, Kirsten Gillibrand, also thinks that the Democrats should vote to go forward with the spending bill, unlike Senator Tim Kaine that we just heard from. And my guess is, I don't speak for either Schumer or Gillibrand, but my guess would be if they were here, they'd say, you're being naive. It's really just a choice between voting for a government shutdown or voting not for a government shutdown. People aren't going to come back. It just doesn't happen that way. Again, that's not me. I imagine that that's what they would say to you.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that Senate Democrats think that it is beyond wildest convention for us to come back. But House Democrats have done that before. The House has reconvened in emergency sessions before. I've certainly voted on the floor of Congress they've even called us back from August recess before. This idea that it is beyond the scope of imagination for us to come back from vacation is just not an acceptable answer for the American public.
I want to play something that President Trump said earlier today. Take a listen.
If it's shut down, it's only going to be, if there's a shutdown, it's only because of the Democrats, and they would really be taking away a lot from our country and from the people of our country.
Your colleagues, House Republicans, are already using the term Schumer shutdown, which has that nice alliterative style. Are you not worried at all about Democrats taking the heat for the shutdown?
We know, and the American people are not going to have the wool pulled over their eyes. Everybody knows that Donald Trump is president, that Republicans have the Senate, and Republicans have the House. They have the keys to the entire United States government. And if Republicans wanted to avert a shutdown, they can. They can. They can, if they need Democratic votes, then they can negotiate with Democrats to get those votes. It is simple. They have two options, to pass it with their votes or to pass it with Democratic votes. And we also see the data bearing this out. When you look at public polling from very reputable firms, we see that the American people understand that, and they know that the party in charge of government is the party that's in charge of keeping government open.
What do you think of the job Democratic leaders are doing, not just Senate Democratic leaders, but also Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, your fellow New Yorker, in terms of standing up to Trump?
Well, when we look at this vote around this government funding bill that we saw this week, Leader Hakeem Jeffries was able to keep the entire House Democratic caucus united and together.
Except for Jared Golden.
Right.
Except
every single House Democrat, including every single House Democrat who won a Trump district, except for one out of over 200, voted against this deeply partisan, extreme Republican spending bill. Not just because they're Democrats, but because they know it's bad for the country. This bill is bad for the country. And so I think that in terms of Democratic leadership in the House, we've seen that result in the House. I think it's time that we see similar results in the Senate.
Would you, what do you think of the job that Chuck Schumer is doing? Would you ever challenge him, do you think?
I think that what we need right now is a united Senate Democratic caucus that can stand up for this country and not.
And the problem that AOC has is that's just not the case. It's never happened. When Joe Biden was president, the Democratic senators came out and blocked his whole agenda. You know what I mean? Like what is she talking about? And there was no consequences for that. In fact, Joe Biden celebrated Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema more than any other senator. He was all over them. And now they're both out of office.
Not vote for cloture and not vote for this bill. And I think that the strength that we have is in this moment. Reconciliation and all of these, Republicans do not need Democratic votes for that. They need it for this. And so the strength of our leadership in this moment is going to demonstrate the strength of our caucus. And I cannot urge enough how bad of an idea it is to empower and enable Donald Trump and Elon Musk in this moment. It is dangerous and it is reckless.
Well, you just talked about the strength of your leadership. Chuck Schumer just said that he's going to vote for cloture. Not only the Democrats can do it, but he's going to participate in it. Does that mean that you think he's a weak Senate leader?
I think that would be a mistake. But we have time between now and tomorrow, and I hope that individuals that are considering that reconsider it. I genuinely do. I don't think it's what New Yorkers want. I don't think it's what the country wants. This is genuinely not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about deep cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. This is about the evisceration of the federal government. This is about codifying the looting that is happening at the behest of Elon Musk in order to pay for his tax breaks for billionaires. And we have a responsibility to stand up for it. That is why people elected us, and that is our responsibility to them right now.
Yeah, Schumer has now. It's funny that she won't say yes because she thinks she's playing good politics with the party, but every time she does that shit, she just loses face. Yeah, that's the problem. Is that there's just no gain from supporting the Democratic Party. Like, people just dislike you more. Like, you don't win over anybody. Like, that's the reality. Like, look at this shit, chat. This just dropped today.
Spare all I have to say, Democrats, call your office. You know, we're March Madness times. Terrible, terrible, terrible. To quote the great Charles Barkley, view Democratic Party favorably. CNN SRS, look at this, 29%. NBC News, you want to go lower than that? How about 27%? Both are record lows. The lowest going back to 1992 in CNN polling, the lowest going back on record to 1990 in NBC News polling. The majority of Americans hold an unfavorable or negative view of the Democratic Party at this point. All I can say is I'm a big fan of the oldies, so I'm going to quote Chubby Checker, how low can you go?
Nice. Well done. With that, what about congressional Democrats specifically?
Yeah, what about congressional Democrats specifically? You think these numbers are low? How about this one? Holy Toledo. Voters' views of the Democrats in Congress among all voters disapprove, 68%. And look at the approved number, just 21%, even lower than the Democratic Party at large. This is the lowest on record for Democrats, according to Quinnipiac University polling. You think these numbers are bad? Let's go to this side of the screen. We'll look how Democratic voters feel. Get this. The plurality of Democratic voters disapprove of Democrats in Congress at 49%, and just 40% approve. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Oh, my goodness gracious, you just can't get worse than these numbers.
And this is the number right here really driving all of this. If Democrats have turned, if Democratic voters have turned on Democrats in Congress and the Democratic Party, that's what puts the numbers at historic lows. What is it they want to be seeing, these voters?
What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. They don't like what's coming out of some of those Senate Democrats like Chuck Schumer, because take a look at the direction of the party. Democratic voters on Democrats in Congress doing too little to oppose Donald Trump. Look at this, 77%. Should stay principled, even if it means nothing gets done in Washington, D.C., 65%. And this 65%.
I can tell you, chat, right now that this is more than enough to be the core of a new party. I can't promise you that it would win right away, but it certainly would become. Can you imagine a new progressive workers' party with 80% of the Democrats as at the starting point? They absolutely would win. And you would see what happens. Go down and look at Mexico. 85% approval rating with Claudia Sheinbaum. 85% with a populist left-wing party. What beat Bolsonaro in Brazil? It was Lula. And when Lula is falling off, it's because he's too closely associated with neoliberals. Here is the reality. I honestly think the Democratic Party is a trap. And I mean that it's now a trap, because if you go in the Democratic Party, you're not really reckoning with the real political reality as it is. You can't do anything. You're not going to be popular if you can't do anything, chat. If you go into office like Joe Biden and you have a majority in the Senate and then you can't pass your agenda, then it's like you didn't have a majority at all. It's better to be exactly where you are in reality than it is to have a bunch of false friends and traitors. You think you're a lot stronger than you are because you look at Democrats in Congress and go, okay, we only need to win X, Y, and Z more seats, when in reality, you need to win 150 more seats. Can you rebut the populism never works by my CIA poli-sci teacher? The New Deal. When FDR went into office, he put in people that the status quo establishment said were going to be a disaster, and he became the most popular president in American history, winning 4 elections and transforming the United States to a world superpower and saving us from the Great Depression. And the only mistake FDR made was when he balanced the budget and did austerity. That caused us to have the Roosevelt recession. He listened to a bunch of conservative Democrats and they balanced the budget, and it caused another recession. And of course, the Japanese internment, which was the World War II shit. But like, that was racist as fuck. But when you compare like FDR's legacy, that was the president who made America a superpower. It's Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And it's not because of timing. It's because of the policies he pursued. The centralization of power, the way that he had built up the American state and built state capacity, nationalizing industry. 15 million federal employees. We have 3 million today. What is this? True power requires modesty and empathy, not force and coercion. But what people want from leaders, social intelligence, is what is damaged by the experience of power. I mean, like, here's what I say. is humanity is about creating institutions of transparency that reward honesty. That is what is the development of humanity. The more you build these institutions to hold individuals in awe, the better you will be. There's an ancient understanding, which is the strong do what they will, the weak suffer what they must. Fairness is between equals. So we must make institutions of equals. And that includes in the world system and the world government. Am true is a transphobe. Okay, let me see what this guy. Everyone bombs Yemen, get over it. And they lose. They lose. Like, you're just losing. You know that the Houthis are winning, right? Like, the United States of America has not been able to stop the Houthis from stopping transits of the Red Sea. You understand that they're losing the war, right? You're bombing Yemen and losing. Just like you bombed, Vietnam and lost. And bombed Korea and lost. It's like, wow, look, we're bombing children and losing. And pounding your chest, you fucking loser. You lost the war. Men will never be women and women will never be men. I think one of the problems with people like True is that he thinks he's saying something that is shocking or surprising to those of us who are on the left. You think bigotry is new? You think ignorance is new? You think we haven't seen it before? You think we're surprised or affected by it? I think what you're bothered, and I think honestly, like, the problem I have with people like you is you have nothing and no one, and you're scared. Don't bother with that person. They listen to Shoe on Head. Incel detected. I think if you watch more pick me conservative creators, you'll finally get a girlfriend. You have to watch a content creator who's dumber than dirt and whose entire purpose is to be a virtual girlfriend for incels. Oof, that's rough. I think the transphobe is right. Since trans women are women, they are therefore not men. He is mistakenly correct. Yeah, of course. I think like a lot of conservatives, they're just, you have to understand, and this is something that everyone should take my word for, which is a lot of people on the left don't understand the pleasure of sadism, right? Like you see people making arguments and you think, oh, that person's trying to be logical. They're trying to express their worldview. They're trying to, change my mind on an issue and persuade me. That's not what's happening. He's just coming in here and saying things he thinks are going to bother us so he could do harm and he can enjoy doing harm, right? That's what's happening. But guess what? None of us are affected. You failed. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like he tried to bully someone who didn't even notice because it was so ineffective. That's what he's trying to do. The cruelty is the entire point of what he's saying. It's not to like convince people that women actually are only biological XX chromosomes. You know what I mean? So my response to that is like, bro, nobody is bothered. You didn't succeed. Maybe try again. You think there will still be elections? They'll destroy the postal service system to make sure no more elections. I mean, anything's possible. If they tried to do that, what are you going to do about it? I think if you and Hassan and folk take the initiative and start a new party, you'll get enough attention from AOC and Bernie that maybe you'll be in this momentum and join in. I think that strategy was already tried.
In its contemporary form, there's often a kind of self-righteous passion that accompanies, say, the decision to let migrants die at sea, or perhaps a religious excitement about stripping people of their rights and exorcising demonic or ungodly forces. So they're not vulnerable to exposure because they're not lying. They are openly excited about the murders they commit. So you can't say, oh, you're committing a murder, but you're saying it's something else. No, we're committing a murder and we're saying it is right. So what's to expose?
That's the Israelis, by the way, as well. It's very important to understand that's the Israelis as well. The Israelis delight in killing children, right? The Israelis delight in murdering journalists. That's Ethan Klein, by the way. Ethan Klein delights in that. That's why he's saying, Hassan, you should go to Gaza, because he wants the IDF to kill Hassan, right? He's delighting in that. He's calling for Hassan's death. Now, he's too much of a coward to just come out and say it, He's just saying, oh, you should go to Gaza so that you could be killed by an Israeli drone or sniper or whatever, right? That's what he's doing. And the reality is that Ethan Klein is a cowardly little rat who hides in his little Beverly Hills mansion, surrounded by the feces of his dogs that he can't train. And, you know, with their, you know, the unfixed dog's ejaculate all over the pillows of his couch. That is the Caca Klein, Poopy Klein that we're all talking about. Judith, they, them pronouns at this point, by the way. Oh, okay.
I want to suggest that sometimes these fascist passions are felt as moral and lived as shameless, or they begin as forms of violence lifted up by moral.
It's so funny. He clearly stopped talking about you because you don't give a fuck. He still tries to talk about me. They try to use the Destiny storylines that Destiny made. Basically, Destiny got really mad at me because I had a relationship with someone that he had a relationship with. I didn't know about this when it happened. And Destiny became super obsessed with it. Started freaking out and screaming to his audience about it. And so then he started watching every single thing we did together, and you know, it wasn't the best relationship I ever had. We didn't really vibe. It only lasted a few months, and then I was like, yeah, you're not my cup of tea. But he takes clips from, you know, the like 5 or 6 months that we were together, and he uses that to like pretend like, oh, Mike's an incel, see, like, look at this, and it's like, what the fuck? And this is what Ethan Klein then repeats. And it's like one of those things where it's incredibly creepy to be on the receiving end of it. You know what I mean? You feel bad for, like, I'm used to this type of shit because it's been going on for 6 years, but holy shit, is it cringe to like repeat another stalker's like lies because of his cuck rage. And then you be like, ugh, it's just so fucking weird, dude. It's so fucking weird. And it's 6 years later, by the way. This person doesn't even matter. This person doesn't even matter to me, and I don't matter to them. You know what I mean? It's just like, Zoran is about to max out the public funding cap soon, I think. Hell yeah. Did you hear Bada Panada saying something that's actually anti-Semitic? No, he did not. Don't fall into that dumb trap.
Percent is such a difference from where we were in 2017 at this point, when just 33% of Democrats say they should stay principled, compared to 59% who said they want to compromise. Democrats do not want compromise at this point. They want a fighter. They want to go into the ring like Muhammad Ali did against Sonny Liston. They want to take down the Republicans. They do not want this compromise anymore. They want to be more like Republicans, can get up to that stage and fight. And right now they feel like their leaders in Congress are simply put not doing so. And that is why their approval rating for congressional Democrats is at an all-time low, even among Democrats with more disapproving than approving.
Yeah, it seems that these Senate Democrats, some of them are banking on
give
the
me
idea
a
that
link
there's
to
still
that
a political middle.
Okay, here we go.
We will see. We will see.
But we will see if there's a political middle, but at this point, count me skeptical that is at least what the Democratic base wants at this point. It's going to be very interesting, John, to see moving forward whether or not there are any repercussions come 2026, because I bet there may be some coming.
Harry M., thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
Sarah?
That's the new meta somehow. BE said anti-Semitic stuff. Some of you go chatters. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Ethan Klein said anti-Semitic shit. Shut the fuck up.
The most shocking part of that was how you dipped down and you were able to get back up without hearing any creaking or cracking. Nice to be young, isn't it, Harry?
It is very nice to be young. A good vacation goes a long way.
All right, thank you, guys.
I think that anybody who says that Bada Panada said something anti-Semitic, I probably will never talk to them again or interact with them in any way. I consider that to be beyond the pale, betrayal, backstab, like anti-solidaristic, and a huge red flag. So if somebody says that, like, that's a huge problem for me. And Schumer's like, that just shows that you're too stupid to be around me. Like legitimately too stupid. In Schumer's case, they are literally imaginary friends. Schumer says that he is accompanied everywhere by 2 imaginary middle-class friends who advise him on all manner of middle-class concerns. Their names until recently were Joe and Eileen O'Reilly. For the book's sake, we wanted them to be more national, so they became the Baileys. The Baileys live in Massapequa in Nassau County, a town that is invariably known on Long Island as Matzo Pizza. The Baileys are both 45 years old. Joe works for an insurance company. Eileen is a part-time employee at a doctor's office. They worry about terrorism, they worry about values, and they are patriots. Joe takes his cap off his cap and sings along with the national anthem before the occasional Islanders game, Schumer wrote. They're not ideologues. They're worried about property taxes. It's the tax they hate. It's what Democrats don't get. He has also drafted the Baileys in defending the CIA's human intelligence program. Had Joe and Eileen been in the room and after the human int screw up, they would not have indulged in the blame game. Gutted the human intelligence program or weakened America. This is who people think we should work with. Oh, there's a new Hassan article, The Battle for the Bros.
The political scene, published in the print issue of The New Yorker with the headline, "You Mad, Bro?" Written by Andrew Morantz, read by Ron Butler. By the time I landed at LAX and switched my phone out of airplane mode, Hassan Piker had been streaming for 3 hours. I put in an earbud and watched as I filed off the plane.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. 53 minutes to read. Look how long this article is. Holy shit. Marcus Aurelius. Why is his birdie shirt is all ripped up? And a sweaty right-wing gamer with a 220 heart rate. Oh, hell yeah, dude. Why is he drinking? Does Hassan drink Monsters? But he used to drink Monster? Okay, I was going to say. All right, this is insane. First of all, it's not even a battle. It's not even a battle. Let's be honest, guys. It's Hassan versus, it's like fucking Spartans holding the fucking Thermopylae. There's no battle. There's one guy versus a million. All I can say when I look at this is kind of like something I wanted to write about. Birdie 2032, hammer and sickle. Hell yeah, brother.
Visible behind him were walls of framed fan art, a cardboard cutout of Bernie Sanders sitting in the cold, and Piker's huge puppy, Kaya, taking a nap. Piker had already shown off his cozy-ass fit, sweatpants with kitschy bald eagles, a custom pair of platform Crocs, and recounted his experience the previous night at the Streamer Awards, a red carpet event honoring A-listers on Twitch, the popular live streaming site where he is one of the biggest stars, and the only prominent leftist. He'd begun the day's broadcast by rattling off a standard opening monologue. Folks, we're live and alive, and I hope all the boys, girls, and NBs, non-binary people, are having a fantastic one. To anyone listening for shibboleths, this would have pigeonholed him as a progressive. Also within view, though, were 3 towers of Zyn canisters and a Make America Great Again hat, which he sometimes wears ironically. He has the patter of a Rutgers frat bro and the laid-back charisma of a Miami club promoter, both of which he was, briefly, in his early 20s. Now he's 33, so old in streamer years that his fans call him Unk. I ordered a
Fuck, I'm like Grand Unk at this point.
Lift, then flipped back to Piker's stream. By then he was talking about the overthrow of the Assad regime in Syria, which had happened overnight. I watched as he cycled from BBC footage to Wikipedia, pausing every few seconds to add a diatribe or a joke. The angle he was developing was that Western journalists seemed too eager to portray the leader of the Syrian rebel forces in a heroic light. I'm very skeptical of the fucking former Al-Qaeda guy, Piker said. A little while later, his doorbell rang, and he leaned over to buzz in a guest. I looked up from...
Guys, how much do you think Ethan Klein is melting down right now? First of all, he's watching my stream for sure. How much do you think Ethan Klein is melting fucking down right now?
My phone to see him standing in his doorway. He doesn't run ad breaks, so whenever he needs to do something off camera, like answer the door or use the bathroom, he plays a video and attends to his business quickly, before his viewers can get bored. I'm live right now, but we can talk when I'm done, he told me, already walking away. Try and stay out of the shot. In last year's presidential...
Treating reporters like they deserve to be treated. My one feeling about reporters is... Here's what you need to understand about a reporter. A reporter is not your friend. They are not heroic. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't support journalism. It doesn't mean you shouldn't support reporters. I'm talking about in your personal life. Like if a reporter is walking around you with a pen at the ready, that's a threat. And you should think that. Unless they have demonstrated loyalty to you in the past or friendship in the past, you should always consider that a threat, and you should always be on guard. Anything you say to a journalist could end up in a fucking article. So just remember that. You can't trust these motherfuckers.
Election, Democrats lost support with nearly every kind of voter. Rich, poor, white, black, Asian American, Hispanic. But the defection that alarmed party strategists the most was that of young voters, especially young men, a group that Donald Trump lost by 15 points in 2020 and won by 14 points in 2024, a nearly 30-point swing. The only cohort of men that Biden won in 2020 was 18 to 29-year-olds. John Della Volpe, the polling director at Harvard's Institute of Politics and the former advisor to Biden's presidential campaign, told me. That was the one cohort they had to hold on to and they let it go. Candidates matter. So does the national mood and the price of groceries. Yet some Monday morning...
To be fair, you and Sean Black and Denims are covering Ethan Klein right now, but if for damn certain he's furiously flipping back and forth with... I'm not really covering Ethan right now, actually. I'm talking about Hassan and like... So this is why Hassan is important, and like somebody like Ethan Klein and Destiny aren't, right? Like, and they fundamentally... And here's the reality, chat. It's either Hassan Piker or it's no one. And a lot of for Ethan Klein and Destiny, the answer is they would rather live in a world where it was no one than have it be Hassan Piker. That's the reality we're fighting, because they're very comfortable with the fascists. They're white male Zionists. The status quo serves them very well. Rich white male Zionists. They don't give a fuck if you guys don't have health care. They don't give a fuck if you're drowning in student loans. Because they got rich off the internet from pure fucking luck, because they were consistently posting or consistently streaming right when these websites were created. They were the early adopters who got lucky and who are completely disconnected from reality.
Quarterbacks also noted that just as 1960 was the first TV election and 2016 was the first social media election, the 2024 presidential campaign was the first to be conducted largely on live streams and long-form podcasts, media that happened to be thoroughly dominated by MAGA bros. The biggest of them all, Joe Rogan, spent the final weeks of the campaign giving many hours of fawning airtime to Trump.
Okay, so Chad, I need to have this video. I need to have this article open twice. I want to have one where I can pause it quickly without having to scroll, and another where I can watch the text. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. Because I want to be able to add commentary, but so we're going to be listening to this for a while. The one thing that I will say here is Joe Rogan became a MAGA bro because the Democratic Party shit on him because he was supporting Bernie Sanders. This is kind of the thing that's unacknowledged. It's like, oh, Joe Rogan is just this right winger. And the reality is the reason why Joe Rogan got popular is because he wasn't a right winger, or at least he wasn't perceived to be. Same thing with Asmongold, right? Asmongold has always been a secret, the dog whistles were there if you were a right winger to understand that Asmongold was a right winger, right? But he was way, way, way more chill about it, and he would say some corporate progressive things in the past. Now he's out and open about who he is. It's not very complicated. I don't think Asmongold is grifting. Just to be clear, I think Asmongold is an incurious right winger, right? That's it. I don't think he really cares about the truth. I don't think he values, I think he holds really backward beliefs and values. I don't think he's grifting. I think he's literally saying what he believes. I think that he doesn't really care about politics and he doesn't want to be a political actor. And that's actually good. That's actually good. I like the fact that Asmongold is soaking up right wing. I think a lot of people are like, damn, it sucks that he's the biggest, political streamer or whatever. No, it's good. Asmongold, can you imagine women watching Asmongold and being persuaded? Can you imagine normies seeing Asmongold and being persuaded? The more Asmongold represents the right, the better. So for me, I think it's fine. Show clips of Asmongold to your mom.
And to his running mate, J.D. Vance, and his key allies, such as Elon Musk, before endorsing Trump on the eve of the election. At no point was I like, only I, a dickhead on the internet, am qualified to teach these kids why we need a functioning welfare state, Piker told me. I just felt like no one else was really in these spaces trying to explain these things. Certainly not the Democrats. Piker has almost 3 million Twitch followers, and as with most guys who talk into microphones on the internet, his audience skews young, male, and disaffected. At the peak of his election night stream in November, he had more than 300,000 viewers.
Asmongold is a mom's nightmare, right? If you see your son following Asmongold and you see that he lives in filth, he doesn't brush his teeth and he's smearing the blood of his rotten teeth on the wall. He's got cockroaches clawing all over him. He looks like a chemotherapy patient. The average mother is looking at would look at that and go, "Oh my God, that's my worst nightmare." He sits there and plays video games all day. I think that's part of the fun of why people watch Asmongold, right? It's like I'm going to see somebody who's, if you have a messy room, right, and you turn on Asmongold, you're like, well, I'm not that bad. Like that's the entire allure of Asmongold. I'm not that bad.
He broadcasts 7 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day, usually from his house in West Hollywood, and he doesn't use visual pyrotechnics to hold his viewers' attention. Most of the time, what you see on his stream is an overlay of 3 things: a fixed shot of Piker sitting at his desk, a screen share of whatever he's looking at on his computer, and his chat, where fans supply pertinent links, caps lock shit talk, and puppy emojis, all surging in real time up the right side of the screen.
Can I just say that it's so funny that the younger generations what is equivalent to a Zoom presentation for their entertainment? Congratulations, chat. No, Mike, it needs Subway Surfers? No, it doesn't. By the way, that fucking meme is dead, isn't it? Like, people aren't even doing that anymore.
Although Piker hates Trump, he's hardly a loyal Democrat. At bottom, he's an old-school hard leftist, not a liberal. On his bedside table, he has some protein Pop-Tart knockoffs and a copy of the Communist Manifesto. Many of his opinions, for example, that the American empire has been a destructive force on the whole, would surely be off-putting to the median voter. But he is just one of many independent media creators with an anti-Trump message.
The idea that, okay, I could hear the sound of the editorial thumb coming in with that comment, which is just like the average American wants to be an isolationist. The average American's opinion on foreign policy is, why are we spending so much money over there when we got so many problems over here? Why the hell are we spending so much money over there when we got so many problems over here? That's the average American's opinion. They're not like, America needs to maintain a credible deterrent in the South China Sea to ensure that China can be contained if geopolitical conditions warrant. Like, that's not the average American, okay? The average American isn't like, we need to build advanced missile bases on those Japanese atolls, and we need to secure strategic alliances with Pacific nations so that the United States can maintain a qualitative edge over China in any confrontation. Like, that's not the average American, okay? The average American isn't like, we need to spend more money over there, they're gonna be over here. That's not a thing. Okay, the average American is like, why the fuck are there so many potholes in my street? Why is there so much asbestos in my kid's fucking school? Why are there homeless people digging through the trash on my block? Why are there people with clear mental illnesses screaming out loud in the middle of the night? That's what the average American voter is like thinking about. They're not thinking about, they're thinking about the fact they can't afford the doctor bill they just got. Okay, they're not thinking about America needs to develop an alternative to the aging B-1 strategic bomber force. That's why I'm in favor of spending $400 billion on the B-21 Raider strategic stealth bomber to ensure that our nuclear triad is maintained credibly. That's not the average American. Okay, the average American is not some sort of foreign policy freak.
In recent weeks, the political podcast charts have included The Bulwark, This Is Gavin Newsom, and even a show called
The Bulwark, anti-Trump Republicans promoted by MSNBC, Gavin Newsom, centrist Democrat scum that would only be popular in California, and Raging Moderates. Oh my God.
Raging Moderates. For a couple of weeks last month, a liberal show called The Midas Touch Podcast beat out The Joe Rogan Experience for the #1 spot. Corporate media too often has a both sides perspective, Ben Meiselas, one of the Midas Touch co-hosts, told me. We do not mince words about the threat to workers, the threat to democracy. One piece of fan art on Piker's wall is a cartoon of him operating a daycare center, shielding a room full of lost boys from the malign chaos of the open internet. You gravitate to him because he's just a voice you find relatable. Piker's producer, who goes by March, told me. A lot of people don't even put a political label on it, at least at first. Piker gets up early every morning to work out, posting his daily stats so that his fans, his community, can follow along from home. He gives dating advice and motivational speeches. At a moment when there seems to be an ever-shortening algorithmic pipeline from bench-pressing tips to misogynist rage, Piker tries to model a more capacious form of masculinity. A straight guy, 6'4" and movie star handsome, who's as comfortable wearing camo to a gun range.
We're going to have to listen to Ethan Klein and Destiny fucking melting down over this. They're going to say, he's glazing him! He's glazing him! He's glazing him! Stupid sexy Hassan. Stupid sexy Hassan. They are, though? No, they're just they're being objective. He is 6'4". He is super handsome. That's just objective fact. As much as anything can be objective, His height and the fact that Hassan Piker is considered handsome is just an objective truth. Maybe, looks are subjective. But if you gathered a bunch of women and said, do you guys think this guy is handsome? They would say yes. Who's as comfortable wearing camo to the gun range
as he is walking a red carpet in split-toe Margiela boots? Once viewers have come to trust him, they may be more open to his riffs on the rights of the poor or of trans people, delivered not as a primer on Judith Butler, but in the register of, bro, don't be a dick.
I do think that he would. I mean, man, Judith Butler. I'm not even going to start. It's not even important. It's not important. Like, whenever there's these kind of CIA left who say a lot of smart shit and a lot of really useful ideas, and they are important, but the way they were captured by America's security state is very uncomfortable. George Orwell would be a great example of that.
I pulled up a chair just out of frame. Kaya ambled toward me, vetting my scent. Piker talked, almost without interruption, for 4 more hours, holding forth about recent internet drama, a documentary about the history of NATO, and the United Healthcare CEO's assassin, who had not yet been identified. Within reach of his rolling desk chair was a mini fridge full of cold brew and Diet Mountain Dew. Some of his takes were too unpolished for prime time. Bro, these guys are so cucked, he said.
They love quotes of him saying bro. It's like every time Hassan said bro, he wrote it down.
Critiquing a clip from a rival podcast on the right. Then again, a live stream isn't supposed to be a tight, scripted lecture. It's supposed to be a good hang. I gotta end the broadcast here, he said, shortly after 8 p.m. I'll see you tomorrow. After turning the camera off, he seemed to deflate a bit. Comments were still floating up one of his monitors. The thousands of fans in the chat had dwindled to a few hundred. The inner circle who were devoted enough, or lonely enough, to keep one another company after the feed had gone dark.
Offliners catching strays. Holy shit, the offliners are catching strays, dude. The offliners getting roasted. It's just called the Discorders getting caught. God damn, dude. Lonely? Maybe they're just friends. Like, what the fuck?
The Democrats are smug and condescending, and everything they say sounds fake as shit, Piker said. Trump lies constantly, yes, but at least people get the sense that he's authentically saying what he's thinking.
I think that's such a good point. There is such a thing as an authentic lie. I really need to start. I need to like firm this up, but this point I think is incredibly important. There's something so much as an authentic lie. And what I mean by that is it's something that you say that is not correct. And maybe your audience even knows that it's not correct and knows that you know it's not correct. But it's an expression, an authentic expression of your identity. Do you get what I mean? It's like when Donald Trump says Mexicans are rapists, right? He's not saying, I mean, he's saying that all Mexicans are rapists, but nobody's hearing that as he's saying all Mexicans are racist. If you're on the left, you're like, oh my God, that's racist as fuck. What a piece of shit. But on the right, they aren't saying, they don't actually believe that every Mexican in this country are rapists. What they're saying is this guy is not scared to piss off people by saying a racist comment. And it's kind of true that Mexicans commit more crimes. That's what that's how it's being heard by conservatives. The conservatives are not hearing this as a statement of fact. They're hearing this as a shibboleth of conservative racist values and a willingness to say shit that is impolite, which means you're willing to confront the left. That is that. And I think that's what I call an authentic lie. It is a lie that you say that pisses off all the right people. It shows your allies you're part of the team and you're willing to eat shit from the opposition and you're willing to take them on.
He put his feet up and reached for a fresh Zyn pouch. Young men, like a lot of Americans, feel increasingly alienated, he continued. They can't afford college or rent. They can't get a date. They can't imagine a stable future. The right is always there to tell them, yes, you should be angry. And the reason your life sucks is because of immigrants or because a trans kid played a sport. And all the Democrats are telling them is, no, shut up. Your life is fine. Be joyful. No one has ever accused Piker of being a moderate, but in this case, he is trying to forge a compromise. My way is to go, look, be angry if you want, but your undocumented neighbor is not the problem here. You're looking in the wrong direction. In 2015, the economists Ann Case and Angus Deaton wrote that white non-Hispanics without college degrees were experiencing an anomalous spike in mortality from opioids, alcohol, and suicide.
And this is something, I guess this is why, like, I'm Mike from Pennsylvania. And this is like one of the home bases of this phenomenon. White, non-college educated people dying of overdoses. I've had family members of mine who fit this exact situation who are now dead, who died in their 30s and who died in their 40s, far before their time. And that is why, that's where my anger comes from, is just the blatant coastal elite denial of the reality of what is happening to large swaths of this country.
They later called these deaths of despair. In 2016, J.D. Vance, then an anti-Trump conservative, published a memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, about the struggles of white rural families like his own.
Actually, it's more like him shitting on them. He doesn't really, it's not about the struggles. It's about how they deserve their struggles because they're lazy and entitled. And it's basically the conservative version of settlers. Basically, J.D. Vance goes, these people are labor aristocrats whining about their lost privilege and they deserve to die because they're too lazy and stupid to do what I did, which is win. Like, that's literally Hillbilly Elegy. Hillbilly Elegy is settlers, but written by a conservative. It's kind of interesting how the CIA keeps coming back to the same arguments, right? Oh, I'm reading Settlers right now. Is it bad? I would consider Settlers to be if there's any political work that I hold in more contempt, I can't think of one. I think it may be the worst piece of of thought ever written. It's I would say from the point of view of the CIA, it's probably the most effective thing they ever wrote. Like, Settlers is one of those things where you have to step back and go, wow, the CIA could really, they've got moves. They've got fucking moves. It's like, you know, you see that and it's like, damn, CIA's got hands. And people will come in here and defend it. That's the thing that's real. That shows you that it's got hands, because you have people in here who think themselves radical and they're out there going like, actually, the worker in the Imperial Corps is actually ineffective and not worth organizing, and will never show solidarity with socialist movements abroad. It's like, wow, that seems to be exactly what the CIA wants you to think. That's crazy how it lines up exactly with what they want you to think.
Promoting the book on PBS, he explained, but did not yet excuse, why such voters were drawn to Trump. I think that the sense of cultural alienation breeds a sense of mistrust. The first Trump administration didn't deliver many material gains to the rural poor. Deaths of despair continued to rise, and wages continued to stagnate. But at least Trump spoke to their anguish and seemed outraged on their behalf. In retrospect, the question may not be why so many non-urban, non-elites became Trump Republicans, but what took them so long. Around the same time, social scientists started to notice an overlapping crisis. The statistics were grim. 21st century males were, relative to their forefathers and their female contemporaries, much more likely to fall behind in school, drop out of college, languish in the workforce, or die by overdose or suicide.
I think one of the big problems with this is, like, there's people like me who succeeded anyway. And so people see people like me or people like Hassan and they go, see, you guys succeeded. That means the guys who failed deserved it. And it's like, no, I am just wired in such a way that I can perform well on tests. I am wired in such a way that I can recall information readily and easily. That is just, it's basically like, have you ever heard of an explanation of an A student? An A student, a straight A student, is somebody who is a person that can learn on their own. A straight A student is somebody who, it doesn't matter how bad their teacher is, as long as they have a syllabus and a list of stuff they need to know, they're going to show up on test day knowing that. I am a straight A student. I don't need a teacher to guide me. Okay? Like, I could autodidact my way through all this shit. I don't need your help. Whereas students that get some A's and some B's and some C's, that's the student who, if they have a bad teacher, they're going to underperform. But if they have a good teacher, they're going to rise to the same level of expertise that I did. That's the average person. The average person is somebody who the teacher and the way things are taught and the structure of the situation is going to help them succeed. And our society is designed more and more and more for young men not to succeed. Now, you could say a lot of that is their own autodidact. I wish I could self-suck. I didn't say auto dick suck. I said autodidact. And like, that is the problem that we have, is a lot of people are like, look, you could succeed if you were better. Therefore, you deserve to lose. And that is the nub. That is the heart of conservative thought, by the way. That is the nub of, like, if you hear yourself saying shit like that, that's why I hate settlers so much. If you start blaming individuals for the problem of systems, you've become a conservative. Human beings are not independent agents. Human beings are the products of their environment. And there is a genetic component. There is a component that is heritable. Overall, the vast majority of us are the products of the societies and cultures and identities and social conditioning that we receive. And so when you just start pointing at people that are suffering and go, it's because you made this X, Y, and Z mistake. If that mistake is expected, the system should change to not make that mistake less common. Be kind to people, be ruthless to systems. That's a Michael Brooks quote.
The title of a 2012 book by the journalist Hannah Rosen declared The End of Man. The following year, the economists Marianne Bertrand and Jessica Pan published a paper called The Trouble with Boys. In one survey, more than a quarter of men in their teens and 20s reported having no close friends. When COVID hit, men were significantly more likely to die from it. In the 15 years I've been looking...
Well, that's actually genetics, by the way. Well, that's partially genetics and partially culture. This is, first of all, men have weaker immune systems than women. This is a scientific fact. Sex differences in immune responses. I'm talking about female chromosomes, so-called. They have better immune systems. Sex differences in immune responses result in different susceptibility of males and females to autoimmune diseases, malignancies, and infectious diseases, as well as affecting the outcome of vaccination. XX is better than XY. Mike, sex is based on 5 different factors of biology, not just the chromosomes. Very true. Very true. I'm just talking about the genetic component here. Very true. The physical sex is a result of a whole bunch of different factors that are epigenetic, that are genetic, but genetic is a component. We're talking about that specific part. Men are genetically inferior due to having XY chromosomes instead of double X. We did a deep dive into my intro to human genetics class in college at SUNY, one of the best gen ed courses I took. Yeah, men have less genetic information than women do, which means they're more susceptible to chromosomal damage. It's just a fact. There's no debate. When we're talking about the sex, male sex, not men. Sorry, don't let the woke of the day freak out. In the 15 years I've been looking at the statistics, the outcome for men has not changed. What did change tremendously is the culture. The last Democratic presidential candidate to win the male vote was Barack Obama. Okay, I should be...
At the statistics. The outcomes for men have not changed, Rosen told me. What did change tremendously is the culture. The last Democratic presidential candidate to win the male vote was Barack Obama. When Bernie Sanders ran for president, he had a zealous male following, but many top Democrats treated the Bernie bros less like a force to be harnessed than like a threat to be vanquished. A white dudes for Harris Zoom call raised millions for Kamala Harris's campaign, but it would have been anathema to her base if she'd given a speech about what she planned to do for white dudes. This was, meanwhile, a key part of Trump's appeal. In a 2022 book, Of Boys and Men, Richard Reeves, a social scientist and a fellow at the Brookings Institution, blasts Republicans for exploiting male dislocation and misogynist fury at the expense of women's rights. But he also lambastes Democrats for pathologizing masculinity. He gives an example from his son's high school in Bethesda, Maryland, where boys passed around a spreadsheet ranking their female classmates by attractiveness, behavior that Reeves describes as immature, even harmful, but not worthy of an international incident, which is what it became. He writes that indiscriminately slapping the label of toxic masculinity onto this kind of behavior is a mistake, likely to propel young men to the online manosphere, where they will be reassured.
Okay, I think if this happens, you give the boys a talking to. This is a parental issue, right? You give the boys a talking to and you say, this is wrong, this is bad. And then that's that. But you know who also had a spreadsheet? Extra fucking Emily. This is more of like an autistic thing than I think it is a toxic masculinity. I think it's just like a socially maladjusted thing rather than like a toxic masculinity thing.
Sure that they did nothing wrong and that liberals are out to get them. At some point between Bill Clinton playing the saxophone on the Arsenio Hall show and Hillary Clinton describing potential voters as deplorables, the Democrats came to be perceived as the party of scolds and snobs. Liberals used to be the counterculture. Today, they're the defenders of traditional norms and institutions.
Liberals were never the counterculture. Liberals were absolutely never the counterculture. You're incorrect. You're incorrect. Liberals have retroactively absorbed the hippie, oh yeah, we were against the war in Vietnam. We were the hippies. And it's like, not really. The reality is that liberals were the guys in office saying, crack their heads at Dealey Plaza.
This may not have been the best political strategy at any time. It certainly isn't now, when trust in institutions has never been lower. It's impossible to know how many young men fit into this category, but there is clearly a kind of guy, the contemporary don't tread on me type who demands both the freedom to have gay friends and the freedom to use gay as an insult, who resents the idea.
That is, ladies and gentlemen, so this is Joe Rogan in a nutshell. I've talked about this before. I consider this the vulgar vote or the downscale vote. It's a good example of this would be Insane Clown Posse or old Howard Stern, or get what I'm saying, chat? Like this kind of like very vulgar, down to earth, they like sex and fart jokes. They like getting drunk. I like sluts because that means I get to fuck. They love strippers, that kind of shit, right? For the longest time, this downscale type of guy was kind of generally considered a Democrat because the Republicans were the party of the Christian right. I want to ban video games. And now a lot of these guys, they like Trump, and that's where Trump comes from. That was the win that Trump is the guy who convinced those people to vote Republican. They're the type of guy who laughs at like racist humor, but doesn't consider themselves to be racist. Like this is legitimately a thing, right? And I am a person who is a public figure, and I think we talk about rad libs, right? Rad libs are the people who yell at you for doing something like this, right? The rad libs are the people that yell at you, if you step outside the social norms and rules of being a progressive, right? So-and-so's not a progressive. I figured it out. They once said gay as an insult. See, they're secretly a conservative. There's this like inquisitorial impulse among the wokes of the day. You know what I mean? They're always trying to uncover your secret racism, your secret homophobia, your secret misogyny, where they want to create this kind of dizzying array of social rules that you need to follow and words you need to know. And like that is how they gain interpersonal advantage, right? You forgot to say your pronouns. Interesting. Are you transphobic? That kind of shit.
Of his morality being dictated by the family values right, or his speech being curtailed by the hall monitor left.
The hall monitor left. That's the woke of the day. Right? That's your woke of the day. The woke of the day is like, you said dudes instead of a gender neutral word for us group. Why didn't you say y'all instead of dudes? Interesting. Are you a misogynist? That's the hall monitor left. And everybody hates these people. Everybody hates these people. This is a huge, huge, huge issue. Not that it's actually important, but that it is so many people worry about this, which is like, I'll say something wrong and then I will be considered a racist or a sexist or a transphobe, and I'll get in trouble and I'll get fired and I'll lose my position at college. And there's an anxiety that people are holding on to. Now, me personally, I'm uncancelable. You can't cancel me. Why? Because I know how canceling works. The only way you can get canceled is if your own audience cancels you. That's it. If you just keep streaming, if you just keep going, you can't be canceled. It's only if your fans and your followers cancel you that you actually get canceled, or you quit yourself. That's the dirty little secret. So I know I'm uncancelable because you guys are going to cancel me, because I'm inculcating you against the things that might get me canceled. Like, for example, this. I'm saying woke of the day is bad and hall monitor left is bad, and I'm creating the conditions so that if I said something was gay and somebody said, look, Mike was saying that was gay to mean bad, you're not going to cancel me because I've already inculcated you against doing that. Duh. Easy. Uncancelable. Done. And by the way, I think it's stupid to cancel someone over that shit anyway. When pressed, many of these young men seem to have bought the pitch that,
Of the two parties, the Republicans were the less censorious.
And I think this is the primary appeal of Asmongold. This is the primary appeal of Asmongold. Asmongold is basically saying, why can't we just make big old titty games anymore? The left doesn't, they're trying to force the unattractive transgender non-binary people into our games. They're ruining the games with their you know, Sweet Baby Ink. And there is a kind of, and like, me personally, the dirtbag left, that Hassan is also a dirtbag, we like big boobies. We don't care about that. In fact, if you want to put big boobies in your game, have at it, Haas. Big butts, have at it, Haas. I want everybody to have the hot people. I want to have, you know, I want a skin for Iron Fist where he's, you know, shirtless and oiled up. You know, like free the male nipple as well. But get huge, you know, bulges of all the characters. Great, do it. Give all these guys big round butts. Do it. I'll give you a perfect example of what is censorious. Do you guys remember when Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever the fuck that name is, that game? You guys know what I'm talking about. The CD Projekt Red game. I never actually played it yet, so I can't judge if it's bad. But they had a poster in the game of a trans woman who had a big bulge, and a bunch of people had meltdowns over that on the left. Do you guys remember? And that was insane to me. That actually pissed me off. You're like, look how transphobic this game is. They're sexualizing trans women's bulges or whatever the fuck. That was like, that's the whole point. That's the entire point. That's the art. Women can have big bulges too. But also, look what they're sexualizing. It's kind of the aesthetic of Cyberpunk 2077 is, and part of the gameplay is that you can customize your, like, we almost commodify our bodies to the extreme, and that results in a totally new frontier. The point of the is that they were hyposexualized. Yes, exactly. That's the whole fucking point. But people started melting down. That's the hall monitor left. Sometimes I call it the anti-sex zoomer left. The sex negative zoomer left, where everything is problematic, every age gap is rape, and God forbids there be a sex scene in art that exists. This is the type of shit that is actually pissing everybody off. It's secular Mormonism. I remember seeing that pointed out, that alt-right are boob guys and liberal men are ass men. Why can't we just unite and be all? The USA is doomed? Oh, absolutely. Can't we just unite around all? I will say, you know, I have some thoughts on that, which is like, I think boob fixation is kind of like is inherently more objectifying and less about sex and more about like looking at women as an object a little bit. Nothing wrong with liking booby, by the way. It's just, it's a little bit interesting that I think that point is salient.
This may have been a miscalculation. The current Trump administration has already banished dozens of words from government websites and, just last week, arrested a former Columbia student for what seems to be protected speech. But you can't convince voters that they've been misinformed simply by lecturing them. The lecturing is part of the issue.
Well, here's the thing. The Republican coalition has these right-wing, censorious Christian nationalists, and I think this is what's going to be the seeds of the destruction of the right. The seeds of the destruction of the Asmongold right is that the Southern evangelical Christian evangelical elites are going to impose themselves on the alt-right gamer guys. The guy, you know, the alt-right gamer guys with lowly avatars, they're going to be targeted. Like they seem to think their anime and their video games are going to be freed under Donald Trump. And I can tell you it's not the case, because Texas has just voted to make obscene anime, mangas, and video games illegal. Texas Senate Bill 20 proposes criminal penalties for possessing or distributing obscene material involving minors through animated content, video games, or AI-generated media. The bill's wording could target works like Persona 5, Kill la Mill, Monogatari, and raising concerns about its impact on fans and collectors. And by the way, chat, obscene doesn't just mean sexual. It could just be violent as well. Uh-oh! Asmongold! Uh-oh! Texans! Tectone! Uh-oh! Uh-oh! Spaghetti! video. Are the right-wing evangelical Christians who love Zionism turning against Persona 5 in your favorite anime? This is the reality. And this isn't surprising. Ted Cruz tried to ban dildos. Ted Cruz tried to ban dildos already. Hey, Tectone. Ted Cruz defended a ban on dildos. His legal team argued there was no right to stimulate one's genitals. They were prosecuting a woman. If you want to know what the case was, they were prosecuting a mom because she was doing like a Tupperware party for sex toys. She had a company where she would do like, she would get a bunch of women together and she would like talk about different sex toys and sell them. And like, you know, and if you guys know what a Tupperware party is, that's what people used to do, is like they would, you know, you organize a bunch of friends and you bring them together for like a party and you show a bunch of like, you know, premium products and you try to do, you know, you sell them. And they prosecuted her and Ted Cruz defended it. In one chapter of his campaign book, A Time for Truth, Senator Ted Cruz proudly chronicles his days as Texas Solicitor General, a post he held from 2003 to 2008. Bolstering his conservative cred, the Republican presidential candidate notes that during his stint as the state's chief lawyer in front of the Supreme Court and federal and state appellate courts, he defended the inclusion of under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, the display of the 10 Commandments on the grounds of the state capitol, a congressional redistricting plan that assisted Republicans, a restrictive voter identification law, and a ban on late-term abortions. He also described cases in which he championed gun rights and defended the conviction of a Mexican citizen who raped and murdered 2 teenage girls in a case challenged by the World Court. Yet one case he does not mention is the time he helped defend a law criminalizing the sale of dildos. In 2004, companies that owned Austin stores selling sex toys at a retail distributor of such products challenged a Texas law outlawing the sale and promotion of supposedly obscene devices. Under the law, a person who violated the statute could go to jail for up to 2 years. At the time, only 3 states, Mississippi, Alabama, and Virginia, had similar laws. The previous year, a Texas mother who was a sales rep for passion parties was arrested by 2 undercover cops for selling vibrators and other sex-related goods at a gathering akin to Tupperware party for sex toys. This is the thing that Asmund Golden and Tectone don't seem to understand. They're coming for your big tit video games, and it ain't gonna be the liberals, you dumbass. It ain't gonna be the wokes, you dumb fuck. It's always going to be the conservative, evangelical, Zionist right-wingers, you dumbass motherfucker. You're talking about inferior cultures and attacking us. You are dumb. You are a dumb fucker. The plaintiffs in the sex device case contended the state law violated their right to privacy under the 14th Amendment. They argued that many people in Texas use sexual devices as an aspect of their sexual experiences. They claimed that in some instances, one partner in a couple might be physically unable to engage in intercourse, Tectone, or have a contagious disease such as HIV. And that in these cases, such devices could allow a couple to engage in safe sex. But a federal judge sent them packing, ruling that selling sex toys was not protected by the Constitution. The plaintiffs appealed, and Cruz's Solicitor General office had the task of preserving the law. In 2007, Cruz's legal team, working on behalf of then Attorney General Greg Abbott, who is now the governor, filed a 76-page brief calling on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit to uphold the lower court's decision and permit the law to stand. The Texas Penal Code prohibits the advertisement and sale of dildos, artificial vaginas, and other obscene devices, but does not forbid the private use of such devices. The plaintiffs had argued that this case was similar to Lawrence v. Texas, a landmark 2003 Supreme Court decision that struck down Texas laws against sodomy. This is another thing. In Texas, until 2003, it was illegal to have anal sex. That's the freedom that Asmongold is behind. That is the political movement he supports. Banning, oh, you want a blowjob? You want to have anal sex? Illegal. That was primarily targeted against gay men, right? But also could prosecute straight couples. Arrest on unconstitutional sodomy law prompts Baton Rouge police chief to send memo to all officers. Yeah, that was in 2015. But Cruz's office countered that Lawrence focused on interpersonal relationships and the privacy of the home, and that the law being challenged did not block the private use of obscene devices. Cruz's legal team asserted that obscene devices do not implicate any liberty interest. That means that you can ban dildos or pocket pussies or any other masturbatory aid or any sex aid because they decide that they don't want you to have it, and they can make it criminal to own. And its brief added that any alleged right associated with obscene devices is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. In other words, Texans were free to use sex toys at home, but they did not have the right to buy them. The brief insisted that Texas, in order to protect public morals, had police power interests in discouraging prurient interest and sexual gratification, combating the commercial sale of sex, and protecting minors. There was a government interest, it maintained, in discouraging autonomous sex. The brief compared the use of sex toys to hiring a willing prostitute or engaging in consensual bigamy, and it equated advertising these products with the commercial promotion of prostitution. And perhaps the most noticeable line of the brief, Cruz declared there is no substantive due process right to stimulate one's genitals for non-medical purposes unrelated to procreation or outside of an interpersonal relationship. That is, the pursuit of such happiness had no constitutional standing, aka it's not a constitutional right to masturbate, according to Ted Cruz and the Republican Party. And the brief argued there was no right to promote dildos, vibrators, or other obscene devices. The plaintiffs, it noted, were free to engage in unfettered, non-commercial speech touting the uses of obscene devices, but not speech designed to generate a sale on the items. In a 2-to-1 decision, the Court of Appeals told Cruz's office to take a hike. In other words, there was a federal appellate judge who agreed that the government should be able to ban masturbating. Ted Cruz lost, but he won one of the judges. And do you think it's better now or worse now in 2007 on the federal appellate court? This is not a case about public sex. It's not about controlling commerce and sex. It's about controlling what people do in the privacy of their own homes because the state is morally opposed to a certain type of consensual, private, intimate conduct. This is insufficient justification for the statute after Lawrence. Whatever one might think or believe about the use of these devices, government interference with the personal and private use violates the Constitution. Well, guess what, motherfucker? Donald Trump is saying we don't have to listen to judges. He said that today. And Ted Cruz and his Zionist supporters, they're all lining up. And the number one Zionists in America are not Jews. They're Christians, far-right Christians like Ted Cruz. Those are Christian Zionists. And they want to ban your sex toys. They want to ban your anime, which they're lining up to ban right now. And the idea that the people that are the threat, the censorious people are on the left, is a delusional lie that Asmongold tells you because he's quite frankly not aware of this stuff.
Democrats got used to speaking about men as the problem, not as people with problems, Reeves told me. But of course, men do have problems, and problems become grievances when you ignore them. He knows a lot of well-connected Democrats in Washington, and for years he has urged them to campaign on men's issues. Not in a zero-sum way, certainly not taking anything away from women, but just to show boys and men, hey, you're also having a tough go of it. We see you. And the response I always got was, now is not the time.
And that's what Bernie Sanders did, and that's why they hate him. Bernie Sanders traded men's problems as just as valid as and important as women's problems.
Rosen told me about a husband and wife she'd met in Alabama in 2010. The husband lost his job, and the wife became the breadwinner, an arrangement he experienced as deeply shameful. She would put the check down on the kitchen table, she would sign it over to him, and he would cash it, and nobody would speak about it, Rosen said. But then man victim became a viable identity. As Rosen stayed in touch with the man, he started exhibiting a more mischievous expression of men's rights sensibilities, wearing a t-shirt that read, "My cave, my rules." This coincided with the rise of Trump, the man victim's patron saint. He didn't offer detailed policy solutions to any of the underlying sociological problems, but again, he addressed them directly. It is a very scary time for young men in America, Trump said in 2018. Like most internet terms, manosphere is vague and protean. It has been applied to Ben Shapiro, a father of four who delivers...
Ben Shapiro is not in the manosphere. Ben Shapiro is not in the manosphere. That's not the case.
...conservative talking points in a yarmulke, and to Andrew Tate, a Bugatti-driving hustler who has been charged with human trafficking. In 2016, after a reedy Canadian professor named Jordan Peterson refused to use gender-neutral pronouns, he was taken up as a folk hero, like Galileo, standing firm against the Inquisition. Peterson has almost nothing in common with, say, Dave Portnoy, another mascot of the brosphere who mostly just wants to be left alone to eat pizza and drink beer by the pool. Yet they all seem to be meeting a demand in the cultural marketplace, one that could be as simple, at its root, as a dorm room poster of Marlon Brando on a motorcycle or Johnny Cash flipping off the camera. Last month, Richard Reeves was a guest on a popular podcast hosted by Theo Vaughn, a formerly apolitical comedian who recently went to Trump's inauguration. Vaughn, an infectiously affable guy with a mullet, presents himself...
This is not AI. This is called a human being reading an article. This is a professional voice actor reading the article. It's at 1.2 speed, so it can be a little bit faster.
As a curious goofball with essentially no prior knowledge on any topic. At one point he spoke, without much nuance, but also without apparent malice, about the plight of the white man. I'm not speaking against any other group, he said. I'm just saying you can't make white males feel like they don't exist. Vaughn grew up poor in a small town in Louisiana. Yes, I know there's privilege, but if you grew up with nothing, you didn't fucking feel any privilege sometimes.
This is the most important point, and this is why class-based organizing is the silver bullet. If any silver bullet exists, it's class-based organizing, which is basically we should be campaigning on bringing everybody up to a certain standard. Not worrying about where relative standards are between different groups and going, well, you're not, you as a group is doing better than this group of people as a group. We should be saying, does every single person have a dignified life? If no, that's a problem. I don't care if 99.9% of white men were having good lives. That 0.1% would be very important to help. I don't give a shit about, and that is the reality, right? And the other reality is 99.9% of white men aren't doing well. Now, at the very heights of our society, white men are doing well. That's no doubt true. It's also true that white men get a lot of benefit of the doubt. They get a lot of privilege. They get treated as the main character, as the default, and all sorts of other things that are bullshit. But the idea that, if you're white man, therefore everything's fine, why are you complaining? You got the easy mode. Like, it doesn't matter if they got easy mode. It literally doesn't matter if they got easy mode. If they're not reaching dignified life, they are a source of radicalization against the status quo. And if you're a radical, if you're someone who wants to change the status quo, you should be looking at all disaffected people.
If Vaughn had made this observation at a Trump rally or on X, he might have been led from just asking questions guilelessness to more overt white aggrievement. If he'd made the same point in a liberal arts seminar or on Blue Sky, he might have been shouted down. When I got to this part of the podcast, I have to admit, my own inner hall monitor was on high alert.
And I don't have this person. My person is maybe I've just seen too many dead white people. Maybe I've seen maybe it's because I'm white. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm white. And I've seen a lot of suffering people who are white. And I just don't think this if you say there's a lot of guys that are having a bad life and your reaction is, well, they have an easier life than X, Y, and Z. I think that's freak shit. I got to be honest with you. I think that's freak shit. I think it's a weird reaction.
But Reeves, looking a bit trepidatious, tried to thread the needle, introducing some academic caveats without coming across as a scold. The U.S. has a uniquely terrible history when it comes to slavery, he said. But he also noted that low-income white men were at particularly high risk of suicide. Two things can be true at once, he said.
This is actually my point. This is my strongest point, is we all know the Southern strategy. We all know the Southern strategy, right? Which is when Republicans stop being overtly racist, they stopped saying N-word, 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 and they started talking about, forced busing and tax cuts and charter schools and things that on net would hurt black people more than whites. So the racism went from explicit to implicit. They went from saying segregation forever to, hey, let's support single family homes in the suburbs. It became a system where the racism and the unfairness was built in and hidden and veiled, and the laws became facially neutral, right? You guys get what I'm saying? How the Southern strategy is, how do we hurt black people more than whites, but we do so in a facially race neutral way. That's systemic racism, right? I'm proposing we do the reverse Southern strategy, which is, what's that? We should do that, but the opposite. What's that mean? I think we should do things that are facially, racially neutral, but they help minorities more than whites. We should do the opposite, where we're going to give everybody universal health care. Well, that helps black people more than white people, but it also does help white people, and that's why it works. Universal health care would help black people more than whites because black people are further behind on health care. But guess what? There are hundreds of millions of white people or, you know, who are also struggling with healthcare. So we would help black people more than white people on net, but we would also help white people. And that is what would make them buy into the system. That's the entire political strategy I'm proposing. Let's do the Southern strategy, but in reverse, helping minorities more than white people. But to do so, you help white people and you make them aware that you're helping them, that they don't have the feeling of resentment, that they're not getting something that somebody else is getting. On net, they're getting less, but they're still getting something and they're seeing their life improve. And so they're not going to begrudge others for what they're also getting. It's like if you had two kids, right? And you give one cookie to one kid because he's the younger child, right? And he's had less cookies overall. The older son was eating cookies before the younger child was ever born. So to be fair, to get the cookie consumption to equal, you have to give cookies to the young child that you don't give to the older child, right? Or else you're being unfair because the older child ate a bunch of cookies before the younger child was ever even born. But the moment you start giving cookies just to your younger child and you stop giving them to the older child doesn't see that and go, oh, this is just fairness. They see that and they go, they're getting cookies and I'm not getting. This isn't fair. And they start opposing the cookies to the younger child. They start interfering with the cookies to the younger child because to them, it's not experienced as making up for historical wrong. It is experienced as I'm getting something. They're getting something that I'm not getting, and I didn't do anything wrong. If you want fairness, you need to average out and make these programs universal. This is called political victory. And it just so happens that it's morally right to do it like that. It's morally right to help people that need help, no matter what group they are a part of. And like, this is kind of the issue that I have is it's just like, people want you to say, no, we need to give programs that go to black people because they're black. And if you don't support that, you're a racist. And it's like, does it matter why this stuff is going to black people as long as their conditions are improving to be the same as white people's conditions? Does it matter why we say we're doing it? Or is it why we do it that matters? Or is it the outcome that matters? And to me, the outcome is what matters. And so that's why I'm proposing the reverse Southern strategy, which is we create universal programs that on net help people of color and women and minorities more than white men, but at the same time also help white men in order to get universal buy-in. That is what I'm asking. That's what I call for. And I think that is the only way. So your argument right now about universal healthcare and how minority groups need to be helped more than white people will get less of a portion of the benefit of anyone. Wait, what? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that white people are far more likely to have health care right now than people of color. But if we do universal health care, if we did Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All system, it would improve the health outcomes of white people as well as black people. But relatively, it would help black people more than white people. Like if say that black people are at 50 and white people are at 70. And universal healthcare is 100. We take black people from 50 to 100 and white people from 70 to 100. So we have equality at a new higher level, but it gave 50 to black people and 30 to white people. So black people were helped more than white people, but they were both helped and brought up to a higher level. That is the strategy that I'm advocating for. And a lot of liberals are like, no, we need to have a program that brings black people up to 70. That's the difference between me and a liberal. A liberal's like, no, we need to have a means-tested program that just brings black people up to 70. And I think that is exactly why the Democratic Party is falling down and failing. Oh, we got a lot of stories that are dropping right now. Oh, boy. I'm sorry, Chad. I'm just watching this off screen because I can't tell you. It's basically a bunch of deportees being abused by El Salvador police as they arrive at El Salvador. They're having their head shaved. They're being forced into walking in this like hunched over position with full shackles on. They're being dragged by guys in ski masks. There's like some sort of like hip hop beat on it. I think I can show it to you.
manga.
Typically, when you're doing things that are legal and just, you keep your identity concealed. When you're in the state. There you have it.
The hallmark of social media is disinhibition born of anonymity. On the internet, no one knows whether you're a dog, a Macedonian teenager, or the Pope wearing a puffer jacket. Podcasts, on the other hand, are built on parasociality. Michael Barbaro isn't your friend, but after making coffee with him in your ear 100 times, you start to feel as if he were. And then there's the world of always-on streaming, in which the temptations of parasociality are even more acute. The inputs are both oral and visual. The hosts respond to your comments in real time, at all hours. You can remind yourself not to bond with the pixels on the screen, but you may fall for the illusion all the same, like a baby chick imprinting on a robot. Piker treats fans in a way that can be confusingly intimate, giving them avuncular life advice one minute and thirst trap photos the next. His Twitch handle is Hasanabi, Abi being Turkish for Big Brother. His fans are called Hasanabi heads or parasocialists. Even as most of his fellow streamers have drifted to the right, Piker has remained a staunch leftist. His explanation for this is that he is from Turkey, where the idea that American economic and military power runs the world, that was like, yeah, duh. He was born in New Jersey and grew up mostly in Ankara and Istanbul, in an upper-middle-class family, spending summers with relatives in the U.S. and watching a lot of American TV. He speaks English with an American accent. His father, an economist, is more of a neo-lib World Bank-loving type, Piker told me. We argue about it all the time, but it's not heated. His mother, an art and architecture historian, is more aligned with his politics. The inequality is just so blatant, she told me. It was never fair, but now we have the internet. Everyone can see it. Despite Piker's brand as a brash outsider, he is, in an almost literal sense, a Nepo baby. After graduating from Rutgers in 2013, he moved to Los Angeles and got a job with his maternal uncle, Cenk Uygur, who happened to be the founder and host of The Young Turks, one of the biggest left populist talk shows on the internet. The show had a considerable footprint on YouTube, but Piker helped it adapt to punchier formats that were better suited to Facebook and Instagram. You've got to understand, I remember when this was a pudgy kid and I was changing his diapers, Uygur told me. Now, suddenly, he's this handsome man, he's dynamic, he's killing it in front of the camera. Piker hosted a recurring video segment called Agitprop and picked fights with the right-wing influencers of the day, such as Tommy Lahren and Representative Dan Crenshaw. He got himself in trouble. America deserved 9/11 was not a particularly good take, even in context, but he also expanded his name recognition. In 2017, BuzzFeed dubbed him Woke Bay. Although he made some of the outlet's most popular videos, he didn't own.
He didn't say America deserved 9/11 like the sense of the people who died on 9/11 deserve to be killed. He was talking about America's foreign policy created Al-Qaeda, which led to blowback. That's what he meant. And when he said America deserved 9/11, he was not talking about America, you and me, or the people who died. He was talking about the American state.
IP. Even when the boss is your uncle, you can still be alienated from the means of production. So in 2020, he decided to go solo, on Twitch. His mother joined him in Los Angeles, and they formed a pandemic pod in a 2-bedroom apartment. He was on there nonstop, shouting about video games or sex advice or whatever, she told me. His fans would see me in the background, cringing, and they would send me earplugs in the mail. That year, he spent 42% of his time live on camera. Not 42% of his waking hours, 42% of all the hours in the year. In a call-in segment called Chadvice, Piker coached men through the small terrors and triumphs of daily life. One 28-year-old from Finland described himself as having an Asperger's diagnosis and an abject fear of rejection. Piker, with solicitude and just enough amiable ribbing, spent half an hour talking.
I will say this about fear of rejection. It's normal, but it's also like, who cares?
Walking him through the social mechanics of a first date. When Twitch first launched, it was a niche platform where bored adolescents could watch other adolescents play video games. In 2014, Amazon bought it for nearly $1 billion, an eye-popping amount at least back then, even as mainstream analysts knew almost nothing about it. My demographic hem is showing, the columnist David Carr admitted in the Times. Still, he concluded, there is clear value in owning so much screen time of a hard-to-reach demographic of young men. One article referred to Twitch as talk radio for the extremely online. I first met Piker in February of 2020 on Boston Common while covering a rally during Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. Most of us traveling correspondents were youngish reporters from oldish outlets, wearing blue button-downs and carrying notebooks in the back pockets of our bonobos.
AKA Nepo babies, AKA elite, you know, the second sons of the elite. Back in the Middle Ages, you used to send the second or third son to the church. Now you send the second or third son to be a journalist.
Piker wasn't much younger, but he dressed as if he were from another planet, in black nail polish and cargo pants that, at the time, struck me as incomprehensibly wide. He carried an IRL backpack, a portable camera setup that streamers use, I learned, when they venture out into the world. Admirers in the crowd kept interrupting him and asking for photos, a nuisance that, for whatever reason, didn't afflict the rest of us.
Because nobody knows who the fuck you are, bro. Although this story is really well written. I've been enjoying this. Not to be hateful, but like, Pepe La who?
I still didn't get why viewers would hang around on his stream all day when they could get an unimpeded view of Sanders' speech on YouTube. Obviously, my demographic hem was showing. You might as well ask why a fan would watch a football game at a bar when he could concentrate better alone, or read a summary of the game in tomorrow's paper. Piker's followers wanted to watch the rally through his eyes because they wanted to be his friend.
It's not quite that. That's not quite right. Your demographic hem is still showing. That's not quite right. People are not watching this with me because they want to be my friend necessarily. That's not true. Maybe some of the people here do want to be my friend. And I'm sure if we met in person, it would be we'd all vibe really well. But, well, maybe not all, but you get it. Most of us. It's not quite that. It's more like I'm somebody they could trust and they could talk to and they can ask questions through, and who knows a little bit more. It's not, it's about having, it's also part of being a community of like-minded people that are all together. I think the bar was closer. You know, it's about learning. It's about community. It's about trust. It's about, you know, the fact that I have my own perspective that vibes more with what they believe. There's a lot of overlapping shit. It's not just about being a sad, pathetic internet loser who wants a friend, which is kind of the way I read this sentence. At least for you, most of us watch because you offer a very left-wing angle to things. That too.
In October 2020, Piker spent a couple of hours playing the group video game Among Us with some special guests, including the Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
And he said he was going to invite me, and he never did. He said he was going to invite me and Trihex, and then we never got invited. Doesn't that suck? Like, oh, they want to bring on Pokimane. Oh, let's bring on Pokimane instead. And Corpse Husband and Disguised Toast.
And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They occasionally mentioned the ostensible purpose of the event, getting out the vote, but mostly they made easygoing small talk. On Election Day, Piker streamed for 16 hours straight, chugging energy drinks. His mother made several on-screen cameos, delivering him plates of home-cooked food. I wouldn't do it for this long if it wasn't for you, he told his viewers at the end of the night. Love you, bro, a commenter typed. See you tomorrow. After the 2024 election, Democratic strategists argued that what the anti-Trump coalition needed was a Joe Rogan of the left. There once was such a person. His name was Joe Rogan. I'm socially about as liberal as it gets, Rogan said earlier this month. He has a live and let live attitude about sex, drugs, and abortion. He is also extremely open to conspiracy theories about 9/11, JFK, and Jeffrey Epstein, an inclination that was left-coded until very recently. In 2014, when Rogan was a fan of the Young Turks, Piker met him at the Hollywood Improv, and they sat and talked for 2 hours. The topics included weed, psychedelics, the state of media, and girls, Piker wrote at the time. Top 10 coolest moments of my life. During the 2020 Democratic primary, Rogan interviewed 3 presidential candidates, Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang, and Bernie Sanders, and concluded that Sanders was his favorite. I believe in him, Rogan said. He's been insanely consistent his entire life. It's hard to fathom now, but Rogan's support was then considered a liability. The Sanders campaign must reconsider this endorsement, the Human Rights Campaign wrote, citing transphobic and racist remarks from Rogan's past. In retrospect, this was the height, or perhaps the nadir, of a kind of purity test politics that was making some swing voters, including Rogan, feel less at home in the Democratic coalition. In 2022, Neil Young removed his music from Spotify to protest Rogan's vaccine skepticism. Rogan took ivermectin, which CNN mocked as a horse dewormer. I can afford people medicine, motherfucker, Rogan told CNN's chief medical correspondent, adding that the medication had been prescribed by his doctor. This is ridiculous. In 2016, every one of Trump's baby steps toward normalization, doing a goofy dance on Saturday Night Live, getting his hair ruffled by Jimmy Fallon, was treated as a scandal.
I will say this, like it wasn't a liability. And in fact, I was one of those people that was super pissed at AOC for, she did some hall monitor ass bullshit over this Joe Rogan stuff. What a fucking loser, by the way. This is that was like one of the first times where I was like, AOC, what are you doing? Like, you're being kind of dumb. I don't care if Joe Rogan says dumb shit about some issues. Because if he says Bernie Sanders is good, it doesn't matter if he says transphobic shit. I'll say this again. If Joe Rogan convinces his audience to vote for Bernie Sanders, it doesn't matter if he has other bad takes, because those other bad takes are not controlling public policy. The moment you vote for Bernie Sanders, your opinions on trans rights go away. And Bernie Sanders' opinions are the ones that become important. So once we convince him to vote for Bernie Sanders, he can have all sorts of dumb fuck opinions and they no longer matter. That's what politics does. Joe Rogan has expressed clearly transphobic. Here's what I wrote at the time, January 24th, 2020. Joe Rogan has expressed clearly transphobic views in the past. However, the ultimate expression of political power most people exercise in this system is their vote. By voting for and advocating on behalf of Bernie Sanders, Joe Rogan is beginning to undo that harm. We're winning. Again, my takes are always right. The Bernie on Rogan attacks were bad faith attacks by Warren-aligned radlibs that wanted to keep the party out of the hands of an actual left-wing leader. We saw that pretty nonstop during 2020. See, the left had the support of Joe Rogan. It's just that he supported Bernie. And when Sanders tried to use that platform to reach young men, you liberals attacked him for it. This is more delusional than the idea that Nick Fuentes' cockholster is going to be the left's Joe Rogan. I forgot I said that about Destiny. Nick Fuentes' cockholster. Oh shit, I forgot I said that about Destiny. You're part of an avalanche of useful idiots that will trip up the campaign and have us talking about Joe Rogan tweets instead of groundbreaking progressive platform that will transform the lives of millions of people. Seriously, get your priorities straight. A lot of online-only slacktivists need to understand that we are in a primary. Spending your time dogging Sanders is scab behavior. You're doing nothing but providing ammunition for libs and reactionaries. Get your head out of your ass. Respectfully, fuck off. I'm volunteering as much as anyone. I'm expressing a valid opinion. Carrying water for liberal concern trolling is damaging behavior. That's the same thing as, like, for example, calling Bad Empanada anti-Semitic. You are a fucking dumbass if you do that. You are a complete fucking dumbass. This is a valid opinion. Sorry, I have a nuanced opinion, but I also don't think you know what my opinion is. You're just reacting. I said you're part of an avalanche of useful idiots that will trip up the campaign and have us talking about Joe Rogan tweets instead of the groundbreaking progressive platform that will transform the lives of millions of people. Seriously, get your priorities straight. These dumb fucks fell for it. Stop falling for it. It's dangerous. She usually sticks to rote talking points to difficult questions. I don't think a long-form hostile interview with Rogan is a good idea. I think her campaign understand the limitations of the candidate. I think if Kamala Harris had gone on Joe Rogan, she probably would have lost a couple more states. She would have been she would have fallen apart, if I'm being honest.
But by 2024, anyone with access to Spotify or YouTube could find hours of flattering footage of Trump looking like a chill, approachable grandpa. While interviewing Trump at one of his golf clubs, Theo Vaughn used his free associative style to great effect, prompting as much introspection in Trump as any interviewer has. Vaughn, cocaine will turn you into a damn owl, homie. And is that a good feeling? Trump invited the Nelk Boys, prank video influencers with their own brand of hard seltzer, to eat Chick-fil-A on his private plane. He sat in a Cybertruck with the baby-faced, fascist curious streamer Aiden Ross, testing the stereo. Who's like your top 3 artists? Ross asked. Well, we love Frank Sinatra, right? Trump said. Ross invited him to pick a song, and Trump, thinking that it's going to come back under proper management, picked California Dreamin'.
Donald Trump does not listen. I mean, the only music that Donald Trump listens to is show tunes. That's actually
Collectively,
true.
These shows reached tens of millions of potential voters. Most were presumably young men, many of them the kind of American who was both the hardest and the most crucial for a campaign to reach, the kind who was not seeking out political news. Trump ended his parasocial media tour by sitting in Joe Rogan's studio in Austin.
Wrong. Phantom of the Opera and Cats. What the fuck do you think show tunes means? I swear to God, you fucking Zoomers don't know what words mean. I forget that people's vocabularies and experiences are so fucking narrow. I forget that sometimes. Jesus fucking Christ. Show tunes are the music that is played at shows.
3 hours. That's too long for anyone, even a champion of rhetorical rope-a-dope, to go without gaffes. which was part of the point. While repeating his time-worn case that the 2020 election was rigged, Trump let out a shocking Freudian slip. "I lost by," before quickly trying to recover. "I didn't lose." Rogan laughed in his face. No one cared. On YouTube alone, the episode got more than 50 million views, and the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. "Unedited, uncensored interviews should be required of all candidates," one of the top comments read.
In fact, there's something they're not talking about. God, there's this like really, really top golfer. Fuck, what's his name? What the fuck is his name? He has a YouTube channel. Oh, there it is. Bryson DeChambeau. He has a YouTube channel. And Trump played a round of golf with him. And it was probably one of the best political ads I've ever seen.
Break 50 is...
Can I break 50 with President Donald Trump?
Welcome back to Break 50.
14 million views. This is the type of shit I'm talking about. Where like legitimately, I think that when I saw this video and I watched a lot of it, I knew that Donald Trump was going to win. That's what I started in my mind being like, oh yeah, Donald Trump's got this in the bag. Because Bryson DeChambeau is got such a personable, like, you know, he is so good at YouTube. And I was like, there's Joe Biden is fucked. If you don't know anything about golf, basically they're playing a type of golf called scramble, which is where you do cooperative golf, where both players hit, and then you play from the best shot, right? And then you keep doing that. So every shot I get a chance to do the shot, then you get a chance to do the shot. Then we pick the best shot of us two, and then we go play that ball. And you're trying to see how low you could score. And they're trying to break 50. Breaking 50, typically on a golf course, par is around 70, maybe 68, okay? And so to break 50 basically means you're birdieing every hole, which means you're hitting one under par for every hole, which is extremely hard, right? This is like almost impossible. And Bryson here is one of the best golfers ever, or at least best golfers currently, right? So Donald Trump they're trying to break 50. I mean, that just even trying to do that is a sign of incredible respect for Donald Trump's golf game. Let me see if I can. What is the best clip of this? Well, let's go where the peaks are.
Good step. Pretty damn good.
Take right a little bit, about 1.5 feet out, up the hill, pretty good. Oh, that's pretty solid, actually. That's really nice. That's a good putt, though.
Okay.
Nice putt.
A very good step. Pretty damn good,
I'll take
partner.
that. That's solid. It's gonna be a big putt here.
He never thought about a putter.
All right, knock this putt in there, partner. It's just like center to right center. Yep.
What do you see there, right?
Notice that there's a black man telling them what to do. Golf is such a fucking... It's so funny. So caddies are people who carry your clubs and they give you advice in the game. It's so funny to see them getting coached by a black caddy. It's so funny. So typical.
Oh, there we go. I love it. Nice. Good putt. That away.
He watched it in. He made sure it went in.
That thing definitely went in. Great job.
I thought I pulled it. I did pull it, actually.
That's how you do it?
That's all right.
He makes the putts. I hit the drives. I love it.
Bryson, would you have a putt for me?
They did. That was a fucking eagle. Oh my God. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, Trump putted an eagle. Like,
you were?
If it's super into the grain.
More and more people are doing it, right?
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, if you're not a golfer, you see this and you're like, who cares? The point is, though, that Donald Trump is a golfer. And there's a lot of people that like golf. And here he is exposing himself to 55 minutes of just talking to a very popular pro, golfing, being a normal human being. And this is just politician goldmine. Did you see Kamala Harris ever do anything like this? Just complete and utter catastrophe, because she's just not even playing in new media, and Donald Trump is dominating it.
Harris tried. She appeared on a few big podcasts, Club Shay Shay, whose audience is primarily black, and Call Her Daddy, whose audience is mostly female. But she never made inroads with the comedy bros. The closest she got was an interview with Howard Stern, a former shock jock who now seems wholesome, like Little Richard in the era of Lil Baby. Harris's staffers tried to get her booked on Hot Ones, the YouTube show in which celebrities answer innocuous questions while eating sadistically spicy chicken wings. But even Hot Ones turned her down. Her campaign staffers insisted that she wanted to do Rogan's show, but that it fell through for scheduling reasons. Rogan claimed that he was eager to interview her, and that he was even willing to keep certain topics off limits. I said, I don't give a fuck, he told Theo Vaughn. I feel like if you give someone a couple of hours, and you start talking about anything, I'm going to see the pattern of the way you think. whether you're calculated or whether you're just free. Imagine the set of a prototypical man cave podcast, and Flagrant, co-founded by the comedian Andrew Schultz, wouldn't be far off. 4 dudes lounging around with a few plastic plants and a shelf of brown liquor behind them. Trump sat with them in October, and Schultz and the other hosts buttered him up, asking him about his kids. Barron is 18, Schultz said. He's unleashed in New York City. Are you sure you want to reverse Roe v. Wade now? An hour in, they cut to an ad break. Hard dick season is upon us, and you got to make sure that you're stiffed up, Schultz said. Blue Chew has got your back. Flagrant is taped weekly at a studio in Soho. I visited one Wednesday in February. Schultz arrived just after noon, opened a fridge stocked with cans of tequila and THC-infused seltzer, and grabbed a bottle of water. He sports a mustache and a chain necklace, and his hair is tied on the sides and slicked back on top. During a show at Madison Square Garden, a fellow comedian described Schultz's look as the Tubi version of Adolf Hitler. He's a throwback to an old New York archetype, the melting pot white guy who tells hyper-specific ethnic jokes with a sly smile and, for the most part, gets away with it. He did a crowd work special that included sections called Mexican, Colombian, and Black women. His newest special, about his wife's experience with IVF, includes moments of real tenderness, but he still insists on his right to do old-fashioned bits about the battle between the sexes. We all have feelings that are a little bit wrong, Schultz said. Take my wife, please. That's a fucked up premise, but there's a seed of a feeling there that's real. It's the comedian's job to make you comfortable enough to laugh at it. Schultz grew up in Lower Manhattan, where his parents owned a dance studio.
Oh my God, dude. I hate these faux populist rich kids. Jesus fucking Christ. Our fascists are the gayest fascist in history. And there's a lot of fascism that is gay, but like, Jesus fucking Christ. I grew up in Lower Manhattan and my parents owned a dance studio, and that's why I must tell you that I'm a bro. Give me a fucking break.
He went to public school. My family was super liberal, he told me. This was in the 90s, when being a liberal, to me, just meant I don't hate gay people or black people. Normal shit. He now thinks of himself as apolitical, and he acknowledged all the reasons to distrust Trump, but the word he kept using whenever Trump came up was enticing. I still appreciate a lot of the policies Bernie talked about, universal health care and all that, he said. But culture-wise, vibe-wise, when all you hear from one side is, that's not funny, that's over the line, realistically, where are people going to feel more comfortable? Trump is known for his bloviate.
I told you guys, see what I mean about, like, Mike from PA's analysis on point again. This is this downscale shit. And the thing with Donald Trump is he successfully allies groups that are contradictory. That's what the side of a successful politician. When two sides that should never align are somehow aligning through the personhood of a leader, that's how you know you're winning. And like, Donald Trump has these guys saying, oh yeah, I'm voting for the Christo-fascist Republican Party. Like, how the fuck do you lose Joe Rogan to Ted fucking Cruz? That's fucking insane.
But Schultz suggested that his greater talent may be a kind of listening. Democrats are tuned into what people should feel, he said. Trump is tuned into what people actually fucking feel.
This is why you need to listen to regular people, because they say stupid bullshit. But they also say stuff that you should sit up and listen to. And this is it. The Democrats are not a Democratic Party. Everybody understands that. Everybody intuits it. And whether or not you dislike Trump, and I despise Trump more than you, Donald Trump authentically represents the Republican Party base. Right-wingers feel that Donald Trump is listening to them, whether he is or not. They feel like he is. Nobody on the left thinks Kamala motherfucking Harris is listening to us, or Chuck Schumer, or Hakeem Jeffries, or any of these fucking losers.
Schultz noted that, as a boundary-pushing performer, this was also one of his own key skills, gauging micro-fluctuations in an audience's reaction.
I said this the other day, but the best definition of comedy that I've ever heard of is getting away with it. You're a good comedian when you're getting away with it. And if you aren't getting away with it, you're a hack. And the best example of a person who always gets away with it, to me, is Stavvy. Stavvy gets away with it. And that's why he's funny as fuck. Bill Burr gets away with it. He's funny as fuck.
When Trump appeared on Flagrant, he talked about being taken to a hospital in rural Pennsylvania after he was shot, and how impressed he was with the country doctors who'd treated him. I laughed at that, because I just thought country doctors was a funny phrase, Schultz told me. He clocks me laughing at it, and in the next sentence, he immediately says it again, and he watches me to make sure I laugh again. Flagrant bills itself
Because Donald Trump is a Manhattan, prissy, show tunes listening, rich kid, fucking lib. So of course he looks down on his own supporters in fuck up, bumblefuck Pennsylvania. And he thinks they're subhuman. Oh my God, it's so fucking funny. God damn it. I fucking, on a certain sense, I love Donald Trump's ability to trick these people. It's almost funny. It is honestly not almost funny. It is funny.
As the greatest hang in the universe, I spent the rest of the day watching Schultz and his co-hosts tape an episode, and then an extra segment sponsored by an online betting platform, and then an extra segment for Patreon. And I could imagine some places in the universe that would have been greater. One of the running gags in the episode was that the hosts kept pronouncing the word pre-recorded as pre-retarded. At one point, a host volunteered how many times he'd masturbated in a single day, and his record was so formidable that the others looked worried for him. In fairness, though, even a solid hang can't be scintillating all the time. One function of a long-standing friendship, including a parasocial one, is simply to while away the hours, even when there isn't much to say. When it comes to parasocial media, MAGA has had a long head start. Before Dan Bongino was Trump's deputy FBI director, he was a popular, blustery podcaster. After Matt Gaetz withdrew from consideration as Attorney General, he announced that he would host a TV show and a podcast, his third. During the Biden administration, about a dozen Republicans were both active podcast hosts and sitting members of Congress, while most Democrats hardly seemed interested in trying. Before the flagrant taping, Schultz and I had been discussing which qualities the Democrats should look for in their next crop of leaders, and afterward he returned to the question. They need someone who can really hang, he said. Obama could hang. Clinton, for sure. Bill, not Hillary. Trump can hang. I ran through the short list. Pete Buttigieg? Schultz wrinkled his nose. Too polished. AOC? When she's being the working-class chick from the Bronx, I could see it. But when she starts going on MSNBC and doing, we have an orange rapist in the White House, then you start to lose people.
He's completely right. Whenever AOC tries to act as a Democratic partisan, she chokes up too much on the bat and she sucks. That's the thing. If she's just swinging away like a populist, she hits. When she's like, I'm gonna do a play where I attack the Republicans as a Democrat partisan, she strikes out every time. Every time she tries to be this calculating politician, she does a really bad job.
Schultz said that he'd invited Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to appear on the show numerous times, to no avail. The Harris campaign says that Schultz never sent a formal invitation. He couldn't be sure why Walz had stayed away from podcasts like his, but he had guesses. If we've got on a guy who was in the military for 20 years, at some point I'm going to go, cut the shit, Tim. You know how guys really talk, Schultz said. And then let's say we start busting balls, making gay jokes, whatever. Does he laugh? If he does, he pisses off his people.
That's the reality. If you are with a bunch of people that are going to be hall monitor losers, you're going to lose then people aren't going to like you.
Yeah. Have you done
microplastic
a 22andMe?
proteins? A 22andMe?
Like one of those genealogy
23andMe,
things?
dumbass?
23andMe? I don't fucking
idiot.
Does Hassan not know that we have 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs of chromosomes? Does he not know that? 22andMe. What the fuck kind of...
I don't fucking
idiot.
22andMe? I've never done it. I don't know. I don't even know what it's fucking
That's
called.
so stupid to call it that. To get it wrong by one digit doesn't even make sense. No, you actually have a 20. Yeah, you have an extra chromosome. You need to take a 24andMe,
Okay,
Hassan.
so
A
23andMe.
25andMe. You have some kind of rare Turkish form of Down syndrome where you get two extras.
Yeah, me and Shane, we avoided it by a slim margin. Okay, listen.
It only affects the way you decide to dress.
Okay, dude. Yeah. Have you done
Microplastic.
So good, dude. That's what I'm talking about. That's what the left should be right there. That's what the left should be. Notice that with Stavy, he's jolly. There's no malice. That's why he gets away with it, because there's no malice. Yeah, he's a perverted, hungry little gremlin, but he's there to make everyone feel good about themselves. But even when he's making fun of you, he makes you feel good about yourself. He gets to, he examines your insecurities, or he cracks jokes about something that everybody is thinking, and it's a way of letting your anxiety dissipate over it, right? He's able to, and he brings people who are arrogant back down to earth, and he does it in a really pleasant way. That's why he's so good at this. That's because he's a dreamboat. Although he wasn't always that nice on Cumtown, I'll be honest.
If he doesn't, he loses our people. Walz was added to the presidential ticket because he was able to talk like a regular person who could make the opposition seem weird by contrast. But things being as they are, Schultz said, the Democrats can't let a guy like that loose.
I mean, Schultz is dead right on this as well. Like, they picked Walz because he was freewheeling and he was nailing shots of the Republicans. And then they told him to shut the fuck up and say how much he loves attacking Iran.
When Trump was on Flagrant, Akash Singh, a co-host who refers to himself as a moderate, encouraged him to consider practicing self-restraint. What we love about you as comedians is you shoot from the hip, Singh said. If you get elected, would you be a little more mindful of how powerful your words are? I will, Trump said, and I'm going to think of you every time.
Ugh. This is one of the things I don't like about Trump. Trump is the type of guy who likes sycophantic behavior, and so he does it to other people. So it's like, that's such a disrespectful thing to do. I dislike it so much. But somebody like thinks they can butter you up by saying dumb fucking shit like this. That's a real profound expression of disrespect. When somebody flatters you, it's because they think you're stupid. You should remember that.
Let's go, Singh said, jumping up and pumping his fist. I might actually vote. Piker starts streaming at 11 every morning, so everything else has to happen before then, or at night. At 7 a.m. one day, he drove Kaya to a nearby park to take her for a walk, then played basketball for half an hour. He saw me eyeing his car, a Porsche Taycan. It's not the flashiest model I could afford, he protested, before I could say anything. But yes, admittedly, it is a fucking Porsche. When Piker is criticized by the right, it's usually for soft-peddling the brutality of Hamas or the Houthis or the Chinese Communist Party. Piker is such a relentless critic of Israel that, last year, the advocacy group Stop Anti-Semitism nominated him for Anti-Semite of the Year. When asked his opinion of Hezbollah, he once shrugged and replied, I don't have an issue with them. By the left, he is more likely to be dismissed as a limousine socialist who lives in a $2.7 million house. He has his own clothing brand called Ideology. While driving home, he took a call from his manager. A major production company wanted to discuss a potential TV show hosted by Piker in the vein of Borat or Nathan for You. His manager asked if he wanted to be interviewed by Megyn Kelly on her radio show. No. A daytime show on Fox News? No. Buttigieg's people had asked if Piker would interview Buttigieg on his stream. Probably not, but I'll think about it, Piker said. Too centrist.
Honestly, that is so nice of him not to interview Buttigieg. Because if he interviewed Buttigieg, I'd be in the chat going, you fix bread prices. Would you still take the pill if it would turn you ungay, like you said when you were running for president? Would you take the pill to make you take the pill to make you straight, like you said you would? Fucking loser, dude. Honest to God, do you regret when you said when you were scoffing at people who were protesting at your Harvard University for the janitors to have higher wages? You fucking scum. Pete Buttigieg is probably one of the most disgusting slime balls in the entire Democratic Party. And I think falling for him is a sign of a low EQ.
If he's thinking about running for president, I don't really want to be giving him clout. In his kitchen, he took a few fistfuls of supplements. Creatine, fish oil, ashwagandha.
I fucking love Hassan, dude. I fucking love Hassan. I fucking love him so much. He's like, oh yeah, I'm not giving any clout to Pete. Oh, God, he's so fucking cool. He's so fucking cute. What's EQ? Emotional quotient. It's like your ability to read people's intent and empathize and like read their emotions and have empathy and just kind of like whether you can perceive the emotional and other the needs of other people. And like I think of Pete Buttigieg as the type of person who is like legitimately still wearing their hall monitor sash. That's the type of person who likes Pete Buttigieg. The teacher's pet that's like in the middle, center desk in the front row. You have to have like a certain type of orientation toward power that makes you it's like you're just not an independent thinker. I don't know what else to say.
Still on the phone with his manager, he sat at his desktop, skimming stories he might cover. Then, a few minutes before he went live, he started seeing news alerts.
By the way, chat, do you see how the reporter just like this is fucking weird shit? Like, you know what I mean? As soon as you invite a reporter in their house, they're like, everything you do. Oh, what are you eating?
Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the United Healthcare assassination, had just been arrested. Whatever else he'd been planning to talk about was now irrelevant. Holy shit, they got him, Piker told his manager. I gotta go. Mamma mia, he said on air. This is the first day where there will be no Italiophobia on this broadcast. Already.
This is so good.
His chat was full of spaghetti emojis and free Luigi. Piker walked a fine line, celebrating Mangione as hotter than me and speaking in generally exalted terms about the propaganda of the deed, but trying.
Oh no. Oh no. You're not supposed to say that. You're not allowed to say those words. All right, since it's already been said in mainstream media, propaganda of the deed is the idea that anarchists believe that individuals within the working class should make dramatic political statements by attacking the person of governmental and corporate power. So basically, propaganda of the deed just means kill CEOs and presidents, and the working class will rise up. And like a lot of orthodox Marxists, we don't really agree with that. We think that doesn't work that well. That you have to organize you have to organize an alternative, and you have to be connected to the working class. And I'm going to come out as a centrist here and say I think that people underestimate the utility of propaganda of the deed, but I would never encourage you to do it because it's against the law.
To stop short of overtly glorifying murder, which is against Twitch's terms of service. We, of course, do not condone, he said repeatedly. We condemn.
We condemn.
Recently, he was suspended from Twitch for 24 hours after musing that someone may want to kill Rick Scott, the Florida.
That's not what he said. He said Mike Johnson, if he cared about Medicare fraud, would kill Mike Johnson because he's the biggest Medicare fraudster of all time. He did not say that someone should kill Rick Scott. God damn it.
Senator. In fact, he reserved his condemnation for the finger-wagging from the corporate media, as exhibited everywhere from Fox News to CNN. Bro, they can't let anybody have anything, he said later. For 6 hours straight, his chatters sent him links to new information as it emerged. Mangione's Goodreads account, his Twitter history, his high school valedictorian speech. On my own, I would have been tempted to spend the day following the same breadcrumbs, struggling to retrace Mangione's path to radicalization. But it was easier to let Piker and the 40,000 internet sleuths in his chat make sense of it for me. Many of Piker's viewers come to him with inchoate opinions. He aims to mold them. But, he told me of the stream, at the end of the day, it still has to be related.
This is what radical is. This is what I kind of do as well, right? I want you to bring me your insights, and then I want to help you apply leftist ideological frameworks, understand them. That's what radicalization is about. Radicalization is you going like, oh, I can't afford my student loans. I can't afford healthcare. I can't afford my rent. I'll never be able to afford a home. And you suspect the system is unfair because you're doing everything you were always told to do. You work hard. You went to school. You took out the student loans. And you've always tried your hardest to be a good person. And yet your life is fucking stressful and you're not getting, it's my job to explain why that is in a compelling way and then offer you a political strategy that might change those underlying conditions, right? Like that is what my job is. And why do I want to do that? Well, the answer is that I am a true believer and I want to see humanity advance. And I care about this stuff deeply in my bones. And I know that we could have a much better world. Many of Piker's viewers come to him. Okay, anyway.
Relatable and entertaining.
This is so...
One of his maxims is...
I want to cover more New Yorker because they have someone reading the article so I don't have to do it. And it's so awesome. Like, I can rest my voice. This is great.
Read the room. In his case, this means posting many hours of content about nothing in particular. Stavros Halkias, a comedian and a friend of Piker's, told me, he's built up enough trust with his audience that if he's being boring and academic for 40 minutes, they'll stick with it until he starts doing something more interesting, playing a Japanese dating simulator or whatever.
Oh, no.
Some days he puts on a Trump hat and streams as Hank Pecker, a Colbert Report-style satirical character updated for the MAGA era. In another room of his house, Piker records a weekly podcast with 3 buddies, an apolitical chat show on which one of the most heated topics of recent debate was proper manscaping technique, and another was whether one of them farted. March, the producer, was proud to tell me that the podcast's audience is about 60% male, which sounds like a lot, but actually most shows in this space are 80-20 male, or 85-15. One theory for this lopsidedness is that, given all the end of men statistics, women have better things to do with their time, such as holding down meaningful jobs.
That's really great that he's got 60% or 40% female on the podcast. That's awesome.
And cultivating lasting relationships, while men are stuck playing video games with their imaginary friends. Recently, on a MAGA Bro podcast, Piker reached across the aisle, adapting 8 hours for what you will to the current decadent moment.
I think the other thing is that women are socialized to actually maintain relationships and men aren't. This is a problem that I have with myself, is that, and maybe it's mental illness or maybe it's just I'm a man, but that women are socialized to actually do relationship maintenance and men expect people to come to them. And it's like, nah, dude, like if you want to have someone be your friend, you have to like talk to them as your friend constantly. You have to message them all the time. You have to like be relevant to their life. And this is something that men are not, you know, they kind of don't think they have to do. And before, a lot of men are going to be in the chat being like, yeah, based, I could not talk to my friend for 2 months and then we'll meet up and be right where we left off. And it's like, well, that's why you don't have 80 friends, because you're not working to keep them. Like women are talking to their friends every day.
Deep down inside, most people just want to be comfortable, he said. They want to have a roof over their heads. They want a fucking nice meal, get some pussy, play Marvel Rivals.
True. True. Or bussy. Or for those of you who are really fucking weird, cussy.
In recent years, Piker has stopped using the word retarded, but he still uses the word pussy, even though it may sound misogynist and lame, despite fans who consider the term ableist. I don't give a shit, Piker said. If you can't handle it, then I guess I'm not for you. When his commenters try to tone police him, Piker will often single one of them out and say, "Congratulations, chatter. You've won woke of the day." It's not a compliment. The day after Mangione's arrest,
I think all of us are woke, but you also don't want to be the woke. You should be woke, but you don't want to be a woke. What that means is, I mean it in the sense, there's two senses of the word woke. The first sense of the word woke comes from Black Americans talking about being aware of structural inequality and racism. And then there's the white liberal version of woke, which is you walk around with your hall monitor sash handing out citation notices like it's fucking Demolition Man, and I cursed.
I remember when you were a snot-nosed rookie pilot.
They finally grounded me.
Shit. You're a damn good flyer.
You are fined 2 credits for violation of the verbal morality statute.
I'll be right back. Thanks a lot, you shit brain.
You are fined John Scott. You are John Scott. You are fined 5 credits for repeated violations of the verbal morality statute.
So much for the seashells.
Like that's literally, like that's the woke that we don't want. We do want the woke where you're politically aware of the world around you. We don't want the woke where you're handing out citations because someone said the no-no word. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't any no-no words, but the idea that you would have spent all your time policing that instead of doing real political work shows that you fucking suck.
Piker had back-to-back interviews with Lena Khan, then the chair of the Federal Trade Commission, whom Piker called the LeBron James of regulators, and with the writer Ta-Nehisi Coates, promoting his new book. In the chat, a user named PoppyJohn36 wrote, "Not to be parasocial, but I love this man." Piker's mother stopped by during the Coates interview. "Hassan, check your messages," she shouted from the kitchen. Piker, grudgingly but dutifully, read his mother's message aloud. "I got this book for the content and fell in love with his writing." "Thank you, Hassan's mom," Coates said. In the living room, Piker's father was sprawled on the couch watching Love Actually. Halkias, the comedian, showed up later that afternoon with a bag of dirty laundry and a calendar featuring photos of himself posing in the nude. While many of
this reporter is absolutely in the Hassan cult now. Oof. I mean, this is what happens though. This is what Ethan Klein is yelling about. Can you imagine this same reporter going to Ethan Klein's house? Ethan, I know you're watching. Hey, Ethan, if the reporter went to your house, do you think it would sound this cool? Hey, Ethan Klein, do you think if the reporter come and hung out with you, would it be sound this fun and cool? I mean, they wouldn't want to sit on the couch with, you know, oh, fuck. All right, we just pulled the mic off my mic stand. Hold on 1 second. I gotta fix this. Back to the video. Fuck.
Halkias' comedian friends have taken a reactionary turn. He has stuck to his progressive principles, but he has never been a hall monitor. He got his start on a podcast called Cumtown. "Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and NBs," Piker said, "we've got the left's Joe Rogan here in the building." In the Rogan of the Left discourse, both Piker and Halkias are frequently mentioned as top prospects. Even if they were secretly flattered by the designation, the least alpha thing they could do The least Roganesque thing they could do would be to thirst for it. Free Luigi, Halkias said, taking a seat. He's too sexy to be behind bars.
True. Like, God, honestly, I wanna give my hats off to the writing in this article. Although at the beginning I said journalists are not your friends, you could see why they have value, right? Because telling a story with text is a very difficult thing to do well, and he's just nailing it, man. And like, I think he's stirring some of the emotions in such a way that it almost feels like he's like really explaining it to boomers so well. It's kind of crazy.
As a model for the future of progressive media, Piker checks only some of the requisite boxes. A while back, he was a guest on Flagrant. When I asked one of the show's staffers about Piker's performance, he gave it a middling review. Good guy, clearly knows his shit, but he sort of comes off like he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. Piker sometimes succumbs to the socialist bro.
Yeah, I mean, this is the really hard part, right? Like, this is the hard part because, like, the thing is, to be a leftist in America, you have to, quite frankly, if you're going to be a leftist content creator or leader, you have to have read a lot and thought a lot, and you have to be able to resist a lot of pressure. So you have to be a man of history. Like, and I hate to put it in so fucking a lame way, but it's true. Like, you're not going to be a left winger in America if you're a conformist. So you have to know your shit. And the problem is, like, there's this kind of vulgar democratic principle in America, which is like, since all of us have one vote, there's this belief that all opinions are created equal, right? Like, your opinion is only one vote, and my opinion is only one vote. So I have the right to my opinion, and you have the right to your opinion. And the problem with that is that's not true. If your opinion is that the sky is motherfucking green, and we can open the window and look outside and see that it's not fucking green, your opinion is crap. And if you convince a bunch of other idiots to say the sky is green, it doesn't make it motherfucking green. And so, like, you know, that is kind of an issue that we run into is whenever we have a conversation about, especially about politics, you have to bring it down. That's why I like to ask questions as opposed to do what is being described here as pedantry, which is like doing a fucking lecture, because I want people to draw the conclusions themselves. That's what I think is the most persuasive way to talk to someone, is not to tell them what you want them to believe, but ask the questions in such a way that they arrive at the conclusion themselves from their own. Like, you set up the premises and you let them make the deductions and the inferences. You don't tell them the conclusion.
Was cardinal sin of pedantry. And he can seem like a jejune know-it-all trying to reduce any societal problem to a one-word culprit, usually capitalism or imperialism. Some segments of the Democratic coalition would find Piker to be edgy or crass or even despicable. But if Rogan of the left is to mean anything, it would surely mean a higher tolerance for controversy, even at the risk of alienating parts of the base. On the scale of whether you're calculated or whether you're just free, Piker is freer than most Democratic surrogates. Ivy League overachievers who sound like chatbots trained on...
by the way, Chet, that is what Destiny and Ethan Klein are also trying to do as a secondary objective, right? Their primary objective of Ethan Klein and Destiny is to get us banned. And because they're not on Twitch, they don't give a shit what Twitch's content standards are. So their secondary objective is, if they can't get us banned, they want to create such a Byzantine variety of rules that we can't speak freely. So they'll be able to go on their stream and scream the N-word and how everyone is an R-slur, right? But we won't be able to say, you know, anything hyperbolic without fear of being banned. And that makes us, that'll make us sound more stilted. That'll make us sound less authentic. So that is, and therefore will be less popular because we sound fake, right? So that is kind of the strategy that, you know, they're all trying to create, right? And ultimately at the end, you know, I just have one response to Ethan Klein. Fuck you and enjoy the decline, you fucking loser. And as for Destiny, you're going to prison, bitch. All right, let's keep going.
Stacks of campaign brochures. But he is less free than the average MAGA bro, who is unconstrained by the need for any consistent ideology. He's funny, but not that funny, Halkias told me. You can't tell him I said that. Halkias has his own podcast, on which he gives advice to callers. On the normier part of the spectrum are liberal influencers like Dean Withers and Harry Sisson, who have transferred the debate me bro spirit of early YouTube to TikTok Live.
Ugh. Harris Hassan and Dean Withers are some of the worst content creators on the entire internet. They fucking suck.
One afternoon in LA, I visited the office of Crooked Media, which was decorated with some Yes We Can iconography and had glass-walled conference rooms with cheeky names such as Sedition and Conspiracy. When the company began in 2017, its 3 founders, former Obama staffers named John Lovett, Tommy Vitor, and John Favreau, were treated as audacious upstarts, challenging the media hierarchy. Now they are middle-aged bosses in Henleys and tapered jeans. We sat in legitimate political discourse. A long table had been laid with LaCroix and popcorners. We have become the out-of-touch lib establishment, Vitor said. Lovett added, my, how time flies.
Oh, this is shit that I would
Crooked
wear.
now has more than a dozen podcasts, including its flagship show, Pod Save America. Vitor recounted a time a few years back when a friend invited him to appear on a show put out by Barstool Sports, a broy podcast network that leans right. Vitor, worried about guilt by association, turned it down. Looking back, that was so stupid, he said. The how dare you platform someone you disagree with era is over. Fuck that. He has since appeared on the show. In 2018, Favreau was hosting a show called The Wilderness about how the Democratic Party lost its way and wanted to include a clip of Obama reaching out to the white working class. A younger producer listened and went, I'm not sure this plays well today, Favreau said. And I went, that's part of the problem. After the 2024 election, Piker appeared on Pod Save America. Lovett got pushback from moderate fans who objected to Piker's anti-Zionism and from progressive fans who objected to Lovett's next interview with a Democrat who wants restrictions on trans women in sports. But he shrugged it off. It's a big tent, Lovett said. It's got Dick Cheney in it. It's got Hassan Piker in it.
Actually, that kind of tent is one without walls and will provide no shelter in the storm. And so nobody will shelter under it. And it'll find the wider you make it, the less protection it provides, and the more people that will go elsewhere. And that's the problem the Democratic Party has. Because it doesn't stand for anything, it protects no one. And therefore, why the fuck are you there? By the way, this is the John Lovett mentality in a nutshell, and it shows why Pod Save America is garbage.
The Rogan of the left formulation isn't entirely vacuous, but it's easy to misinterpret. Rogan-like figures can't be engineered. They have to develop organically. Their value lies in their idiosyncrasies. Their passionate insistence on talking about chimps and ancient pyramids, say, rather than the budget ceiling, and in their authenticity, which entails an aversion to memorizing talking points.
That's not quite right, but that's almost right. I would give this a B+ if I was grading this sentence. It's that talking points themselves are signs of inauthenticity, right? And what I mean by that is it is what a politician adopts as a canned response because they are worried about talking extemporaneously and authentically, and that causing them some sort of problem. It's a media strategy that comes from corporate America. It comes from PR. It comes from Madison Avenue. It comes from advertising mentality. It is not political grassroots organizing. It is not about community. It's not about justice. It comes from a position of manipulation and being polished and fake. And so it's not that, like, talking points could be read to mean simply arguments that you make. Or it could also be read as a kind of vacuous puff of air to distract the audience.
Many Democrats assume that what they have is a messaging problem, that voters don't have a clear enough sense of what the Democrats are really like.
That's not true. The Democrats don't really like anything. That's the problem. The Democratic Party doesn't stand for anything. So there's nothing to message.
But it's possible that the problem is the opposite, that many swing voters, including Joe Rogan, got a sense of what the Democrats were like, then ran in the opposite direction. The good news for Democrats is that the right does not have a monopoly on relatability. A week before his interview with Trump, Theo Vaughn conducted an interview with Bernie Sanders while wearing a Grateful Dead shirt. You ever see the Grateful Dead? Vaughn said, as an icebreaker. Sanders, apparently unfamiliar with the concept, frowned and said, no. From any other politician, this would have been malpractice. But with Sanders, the crankiness is part of the crossover charm. He literally just talks common sense, one of the top YouTube comments read.
I'm sorry, Chad, I read ahead a little bit.
Rogan interviewed Senator John Fetterman. Trump is not polished, but you get a sense of who he is as a human being, Rogan said. Fetterman agreed, alluding to a line from Scarface. All I have in this world is my balls and my word.
Which Trump has neither. John Fetterman, you are such a fucking Worthless sack of shit, dude.
Reeves, the social scientist, told me, there is a strong correlation between which Democratic lawmakers are in my inbox and which ones have the year 2028 circled on their calendar. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut read Reeves's book in 2023 and praised it on X. Many of Murphy's constituents, including his 14-year-old son, took issue with his post. Nevertheless, he persisted, writing a follow-up on Substack. We should try to do two things at once. Fight for the equality of women and gay people, while also trying hard to figure out why so many boys are struggling and why so many men are feeling shitty. Sanders and Fetterman share what could be described as populist instincts, but ideologically, they are leagues apart. On the level of pure effect, though, they may represent elements of a style that other politicians could crib from. Personally, I find the performance of masculinity to be totally boring, Hannah Rosen told me. But if that's what 51% of Americans need, someone who reads as some version of gruff, manly dude, but whose heart is still in the right place, then I'm willing to go along with it. Twitch stars often appear on one another's streams, hoping to pick up some new fans. One afternoon, Piker headed to Zoo Culture, a gym in Encino owned by a streamer and fitness influencer named Bradley Martin, to do a collab. It would also feature Jason Nguyen, a 20-year-old Twitch star from Texas who goes by Jason the Ween. Bradley's a big Trump guy, and we talk politics sometimes, but mostly we just talk about gym bro shit, Piker told me. Jason probably leans Trump if I...
Hannah Rosen seems like an absolute freak. In 2009, she published a controversial article entitled "The Case Against Breastfeeding." Huh? Weird, dude. Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, come on. What the fuck?
To guess, but his content isn't really political at all. I don't lean towards anyone, Nguyen wrote when reached for comment. I don't want anything to do with politics. Crying emoji. By the time we got to the gym, Nguyen...
Ugh. I'm sorry, guys. Like, this is... there's like this like toxic... I don't even know. I mean, I'm just an old man, dude. I don't vibe with adolescence, man. Like that's really all it is. Like I didn't vibe with that kind of shit, and I don't. You know, I just can't. I just don't vibe with adolescence, man.
Was already there, performing for the camera by flirting with a woman on a weight bench. Is Jason rizzing right now? Piker asked Martin, who nodded. Is it working? Piker asked the woman. She replied, a little bit. Before she left, she gave Nguyen her Discord handle. Bradley, I've got something for you, Piker said, removing his long-sleeved shirt. Underneath, he was wearing a tank top with a Rambo-style cartoon of Trump and the words, "Let's go, Brandon." I was coming into hostile territory, so I had to fit in, Piker said. It's perfect, Martin said. Martin, who is 6'3" and 260 pounds, looks vaguely like Bradley Cooper on steroids. Martin has taken testosterone supplements.
Oh, fuck, man. Bro.
Which Piker once brought up in a jocular debate about trans rights. You do hormone replacement therapy, so why can't they? Nguyen is much smaller. My chat just said there's 3 muscleheads in the gym right now, Nguyen joked, not even pretending to look at his phone. Piker roasted Nguyen with a fake comment from his own chat. Jason looks like a twink. They wandered from station to station, first bench pressing, then deadlifting, as their cameramen followed. We're just here to have fun, Piker said, then dropping into a mock PSA voice, and also reach out to the young men out there who are lost, who feel anchorless, rudderless, by lifting some heavy weights. One flat-screen TV showed Joe Rogan interviewing Elon Musk on mute with no captions. 2 shirtless guys, between reps, compared crypto wallets. During COVID, they let liquor stores and strip clubs open, but they shut us down, Martin told me. And then all the inflation, all the wars. It's not like I trust any politician, Trump or Kamala or anyone, to be a perfect person. It's just, if we never try anything new, how can we get a different result? Last fall, when Martin interviewed Trump, he brought up the deep state and asked, how would you actually make an effective change there? It wasn't a specific question, and Trump didn't have a specific answer. We're changing that whole thing around, he said. Apparently.
Honestly, that's good enough of an answer. Like, I know that, like, for people like me, it's mind-numbing, but when a left-winger is getting in there, if that's good enough, that's good enough. Like, why do I need you guys to know exactly how I'm going to dismantle the fucking, you know, CIA human int? Why do you guys need to know exactly how I'm going to burn every source and leave them tailing into the wind? You don't need to know that. Do you really need to know that if I get in there, every single CIA agent will be so fucking known by every foreign intelligence service that they'll never be able to operate again? No, you don't need to know that. I just say I'm going to turn that whole thing around. That's all you need to know.
This was good enough for Martin. The day after the 2024 election, Martin appeared on Piker's stream to explain his support for Trump. They started with small talk. Why do you have so many Zen containers behind you? Martin said. I fucking slam those bad boys daily, Piker said. Look at us relating, bro, Martin said. When they got around to politics, Piker said, one side at least acknowledges that people are angry, the Republicans. The Democrats' proposed solutions were inadequate, he said, but Trump would only make things worse. Martin smiled and replied, you're going to have to say sorry when he does what he says he's going to do. They ended the gym session by daring each other to take turns sitting in Martin's cold plunge. Piker resisted at first. I didn't bring a towel, a bathing suit, nothing. But he went in anyway, in his gym shorts, and his commenters went wild. Hey, Hassan's chat. I hope you all are happy he took his shirt off, Nguyen said, facing Piker's camera. Then he checked his phone. The woman from the weight bench had already sent him a message. Wait, she did? Piker said with a grin. You're about to lose your virginity, I think.
Wow. Wow. Honestly, I really respect this article. I think he actually understood his subject. What an article, dude. Make sure you all give this a click, chat. Give this a click. You know, that's the only way these kind of stories are going to be written about your important left-wing content creators. What a fucking thing. What an article. Holy shit. That was great. All right, let's move on, chat. I just realized something. We are 4 hours into the stream, and I forgot the shill. Oh my God. If you enjoy this content, the only way it will continue to grow is if you support the stream by subscribing at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 1. Or tier 3, tier 1. Wow, tier 1, tier 2, or tier 1. Oh my God, my brain is rotting. Tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. That is the only way. Or if you have Amazon Prime, you can attach that to your Twitch account. You get 1 free sub a month. That's your Twitch Prime sub. The only way this stream will continue to survive is if you individually support it. You have $6 a month. You can't even get in a carton of eggs for $6 at this point. You could afford to give me a subscription for $6 fucking dollars. If you're watching me for hours every day in and day out, fucking just give me $6. If you legitimately cannot afford to support the stream, then I have absolutely no problem with you deciding to be frugal with your money. That makes total sense. However, you should ask members of our community who are these fucking tech bro lazy pieces of shit working from home, this stream on one of their monitors in between their 15 minutes of actual work per week to pay for your sub. Half these motherfuckers probably have gone to Fiverr and outsourced their own job. Brainworms, thank you for the 10. Clear. See, they're all caught. See how they're all caught? Half the people in here are what have my favorite anarchist, David Gravener, said were bullshit jobs. This is what you motherfuckers have.
Bullshit jobs I define as a job where even the person doing the job secretly believes the job really shouldn't exist. But nonetheless, part of the conditions of employment is that you have to pretend that it does. It's important to distinguish between bullshit jobs and shit jobs. Mostly when you say bullshit jobs, people at first assume you mean jobs that just you don't really want to have. Jobs where they don't treat you well, jobs where they don't pay you well, jobs where you work under difficult or humiliating or onerous conditions. And most of the jobs that are shit jobs actually aren't bullshit jobs. Most
shit jobs are really important for society. I'll give you an example of a shit job. Literally going in and draining septic tanks and sewage pipes, where your job is literally to plunge into the shit of society. That may be a shit job, but holy fucking hell, if you didn't do that shit job, we would all be fucked. That is not just that is an incredibly important job. A literal shit job, but a job that we need you to do. Honestly, one of the most important jobs of society. So thank you for doing that job. Bullshit jobs are not that.
Jobs that oppress you are jobs like cleaners or ditch diggers or nurses, servants of various kinds who are mistreated. At least know they're doing something. Bullshit job is actually kind of the opposite of that. A bullshit job, you're often given a lot of money, you're treated very well with a great deal of respect, often seen as the person in your family who most made something of yourself. But at the same time, you're secretly haunted by the knowledge that you're not actually doing anything, that if your job didn't exist at all, the world either would change in no way or even might become a slightly better place. This is one of the great mysteries of our time as far as I'm concerned, because we usually associate make-work, stupid made-up jobs with state socialism. In the Soviet Union, they used to say, well, you know, we pretend to work and they pretend to pay us. They make up jobs which are completely unnecessary. That makes sense because they had an ideology of full employment. On the other hand, capitalism, that's exactly the thing that isn't supposed to happen. A private firm would never hire someone and put out good money to someone who they don't actually need. But in fact, if you talk to people who work for large corporations, they do it all the time. How does that happen? I think part of it has to be explained by political pressure. And in a way, just as in the Soviet Union, there was a central directive saying, we need full employment. They didn't say, therefore make up bullshit jobs, right? But they didn't say, don't do it. In a similar way, we have pressure from both the left and the right to create jobs all the time. You know, on the one hand, you have the left saying we need like public works, we need more money being given to consumers to stimulate the economy. On the right, they're saying give money to capitalism.
How many non-profit fucking jobs exist out there and just grift? And it's just a self-licking popsicle of, oh, we're the homeless organization of Los Angeles. We need to do a fundraiser. 40% of our money that we spend is on the development director and fundraisers. And it's like, and you know, oh, we need an executive director making $400,000 a year. And before you know it, the entire organization is just raising money, standing next to people that are trying to do work with the homeless. But just, it's just grand self-licking popsicle of bullshit. Instead of just having like government workers who go out and when they see a homeless person, go and give them the help they need and put them in a permanent supportive housing and give them mental health treatment and get them, you know, employment. And, you know, we don't have jobs like that, right? Those jobs were cut.
But the one thing left and right totally agree on is the solution to all problems is more jobs. But they never say jobs that actually do something. You know, jobs that are worthwhile in any way. It's just assumed that if jobs are created, they will necessarily serve a purpose. And if you don't specify that, if you don't have a self-conscious policy of trying to make sure that jobs actually do something, you're going to end up with useless make work. It's just going to happen. A lot of bosses, people who hire people, just get very angry at this, at me about this. They're about the only people who get angry at this premise. They say, look, you know, I would never hire someone if they didn't serve a purpose. This is just stupid, insulting. You don't understand how capitalism works. But bosses are the last people to know what's really going on. I trust people to understand what they're really doing, or at least if anybody does, they will.
He talks about his bullshit jobs. I love this theory. This is like one of my favorite theories.
I've been doing a sort of research project where I made up a Gmail account called Do I Have a BS Job or What at gmail.com. And I've been advertising on Twitter. I've got like about 250 testimonies now. And I have broken them down into 5 basic types. There are flunky jobs, which are basically people who just are there to make someone else look good. A lot of people sitting around offices say they basically don't do anything except, like, you know, pass emails to someone and say, no, that's spam, or, you know, they're just like there because if you don't have someone sitting in your desk, you're not actually a real executive. Similar receptionists at publishing companies where nobody ever calls, you know, they have to be there anyway. Okay, so there's millions of flunky jobs like that. Then you have what I call goons. Goons are people who are basically there to, you know, you don't need them unless somebody else has them. Sort of like armies, right? If nobody had an army, no one would need an army. Same is true of corporate lawyers, telemarketers, all kind of people like that. So they often say, this is total bullshit. There's no need for this. Okay, that's easy. The next one is, I call them duct tapers. Duct tapers are people who are there to fix a problem that does not need to exist and everybody knows it. It would be sort of like if you have a roof in the house, instead of getting a roofer, put a bucket down and hire someone to like empty the water every half hour. A lot of corporations do that. They'll hire someone just to deal with the damage of the fact that something is badly organized because it's easier than like fixing the problem. So there's millions of those kind of people. Then there's box tickers. Box tickers are people who are there to allow an organization to say they're doing something that they're not doing. There's a lot of that in government, but corporations increasingly do that too. So one person said, I work at a care home. My job is to like do interviews and collect data on what sort of entertainment people would like to have, which I then tabulate and file. You know, and the problem with box tickers, of course, is that it takes up so much time that you could be be spending actually doing the thing. He says, like, you know, I could be entertaining these people, but actually I have to spend 7/10 of my time finding out what they would like to be doing for entertaining and then losing it because nobody cares. All right, so that's a box ticker. And then finally, taskmasters, who are basically middle management. They're people who are there either to supervise people who don't need supervising, which is most of middle management's, like, people write to me all the time. They say, like, I'm supposed to be making them work. Oh, they'd work all by themselves. I have to pretend I'm doing something, so I make up these numbers and they do box ticking exercises or something. And then also make up new bullshit jobs. There's a lot of people who do that.
A job which is to make up new jobs.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who's basically there to figure out. There are some people that are there to eliminate bullshit jobs, but realize their own jobs are bullshit because they're not actually going to do it. They're just box tickers to make them. So there's one guy who said he worked for a bank where his job is to come up with basically more efficient ways to do things. But in his 15 years, he says he's never seen one of his programs actually adopted because they always figure out it would mean firing someone who's one of their flunkies. And everybody's like, but no, I mean, because like managers and executives are judged basically by how many people they have working under them. We have a really, really twisted idea of the value of work. There was a time that people thought that work produces something, it is there, everything is all value comes from labor. The labor theory of value is almost universally accepted in the 19th century. But they had a very silly focus on factory work, craftsmen, production. Most work isn't production, right? Most work is caregiving. Most work is maintaining things. As I always say, you make a cup once, right? You wash it like 1,000 times. So most work is keeping things the same. It's not recreating things. And they lost that. So it became easy to change the discourse and say, no, production is really created by job creators and wealth producers who are businessmen who come up with the ideas, and you're just a robot doing what you're told. So then the question is, well, how do you make people validate work at all? And so you tell them, well, it's morally good. If you're a parasite, that's bad, right? You need to be working harder than you want to be at something you don't really like very much, or else you're a bad person, and they have people resenting each other. And so now, increasingly, if work is about self-abnegation, self-sacrifice, and puritanical moral discourse, well, the more you get out of the work personally, the less valuable it is, right? And people actually think like that. They say, well, you're actually making cars, you're teaching children, you want benefits too? I mean, that's, there's this idea, if you're getting something out of the work, they probably shouldn't pay you at all, but they certainly shouldn't pay you as much. So in a weird paradoxical way, even the knowledge that you're producing something come to be seen on some unconscious and sometimes conscious level as subtracting from the value of the job rather than adding to it.
So production itself.
I mean, this is so clearly explained by California politics, right? This is California politics in a nutshell, right? Like, nothing. You have all this tax money, the wealthiest state and the wealthiest country, and they don't produce anything. They can't build one railroad from Los Angeles to San Francisco in fucking 20 years. But they sure can put out a lot of environmental impact studies. They can sure have a lot of community hearings. They sure can do a lot of worthless make work bullshit. They can plan to plan, but God forbid you put one steel fucking line in front of another. You pour 1 yard of concrete. God fucking forbid you actually complete a project of any human worth. Oh, you want to have a bench? That'll be $1 million, please. I could go to Home Depot and pick up $2,000, and I could go in and install a bench at a bus stop. But in fucking Los Angeles, California, that costs you $500,000 fucking dollars. I could do it in one fucking day. This is America in a nutshell. And this is why it's already over. It's already over. New data on the reaction to Gavin Newsom's new podcast. Favorability among liberals has declined from 46% to 30%. While some Republicans agreed with his stances, they overwhelmingly viewed him as insincere, calling him fake and pandering. His net favorability dropped from +4 to -6, a 10-point swing in the wrong direction. Only 13% of voters had an improved perception of him, and only 1 in 5 said the podcast made them want to tune in for more. You fucking loser. Oh my God, these Democrats, dude. By the way, thank you everybody for all the gift subs. I didn't thank you when it was happening, but thank you for supporting the stream. You guys are the best. We are currently at 7,008 subs. Let's go, dude. Let's fucking go. 7,008, which means we are so close to our goal of 8,000.
Maserati, Tesla, Ford, Maserati, Tesla.
Bro, Tesla is fucked. I didn't short them yet. Oh man. Okay. I missed. I should have shorted them. That's fine. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Oh man, they lost the whole election bump has been lost. That whole election bump when I was laughing about how fucking bubbly this is. It's all back to where it was before. God damn it. Somebody was like, it's too late, Mike. I don't think you really understand how worthless Tesla is as a company.
That is kind of worshipped. When I said production, I'm talking about industrial production. So that's worship, and so there's this kind of guilt about not being involved in industrial production.
Right. So, but also resentment of people who get to do something that with their hands that actually makes a difference. You know, because people will say that. They'll say like, "Look at these auto workers. They're being paid $25 an hour, and they're getting all these benefits and vacations." And it's like, you know, well, why not? You know, they don't seem to like object if some guy sitting in an office doing nothing gets much more money than that. Well, it's because there's this idea, well, they get to make cars. I get to sit here and do nothing, pretend to work all day, and it's miserable. You know, like they want like benefits like I get too. You know, and that's real. People really think like that. Actually, a right-wing activist confirmed this on one of the blogs when I was saying that they cultivate a resentment against people with real work. That he said, yeah, you know, that's true, because when we started these campaigns against teachers, we started actually talking about school administrators, because they're the ones who really create the problems, and everybody knows it. They don't do anything. And it had no purchase. People wouldn't get excited about them. Then we started talking about teachers, it took off.
Complaining about you, mean?
Yeah, campaigning against them.
The audio balancing was bad on that. In 2023, the city of LA unveiled a new bus shelter, but it was the most ridiculous piece of infrastructure, and so much money was lost during the planning and the bureaucratic process. It's bullshit. I could do this in a single day. I could install this in a single day, in like 5 minutes. On May 18th, the Los Angeles Department of Transportation unveiled perhaps the most famous piece of transit infrastructure in the history of transit infrastructure, the culmination of a sequence of tortured bureaucratic workarounds. La Sabrita, its name translates to little shade, is a flimsy piece of perforated sheet metal hung on a bus stop pole, heralded as a solution providing shade and gender equity. But as bad as a press conference for a $2,000 piece of metal may seem, the reality is even worse. The city of LA already has a bus shelter contract 4 years in the making, which it won't even fund. A sidewalk and transit amenities program under the auspices of Streets LA. After a previous 21-year contract left over 75% of bus stops without shade. However, the city's bureaucracy has so far failed to approve funding for the 3,000 new bus shelters and 450 new shade structures set to hit city streets. Hundreds of thousands of bus riders will wait without shade in the hottest days of 2023. You know, instead of building disgusting shit like this, how about having some goddamn trees and some foliage? How about, I don't know, maybe building some real shelters that people can sit in? New bus shelters are not penciled in the city budget. Instead, funding must be cobbled together piecemeal from state and federal loans, metro, etc. The process of STAP is reportedly still held up for a report from the city administrative office. In order to receive seed funding in the form of $30 million Public Works Trust Fund loan, Mayor Bass must sign off on the ED3 report submitted by Streets LA to the CAO. Mayor Bass could waive the report at any time, but has not. When asked for comment, the mayor's office did not respond. Here are the facts. LDOT, which operates some of the buses specifically within the city of LA, enlisted a nonprofit design agency, and here you go. Here you fucking go, dude. Quone Key to develop gender equity action plan. Following up on the Changing Lanes Gender Equity Study LA.DOT released in 2021. This shit is fucking is worthless. And I mean this completely. This is totally fucking worthless. Make work bullshit. This is fucking stupid. This is a complete and utter fucking scam. These are thefts of public money. This is why we can't get anything done in this shithole fucking country is these liberal scumbags and their nonprofits of shit. What we need is state capacity where the government can just build the shit itself with government, you know, permanent government workers who do the work directly, who don't hire and contract out, who have government, carpenters and government concrete pourers and government metal workers and government welders and government sheet metal workers, and they do the shit them fucking selves, and government glazers, and they do it. They build the structures themselves as a government official. It's not that hard. As part of the project, Kwon Kie convened 2 working groups, a resident advisory committee comprised of women and other gender minorities. Why? You're building a fucking bus stop. What the fuck are you talking about? What is a glazer? Oh, you don't know? It's like, it basically means people that work with glass. A part of the project, Kwon Kie convened 2 working groups, a resident advisory committee comprised of women and other gender minorities, and a city working group composed of members of 7 different city and county agencies, including LA DOT, Streets LA, and the city's Bureau of Engineering, the city's Bureau of Street Lighting, LA City Planning, Metro, and the LA Civil and Human Rights and Equity Department. The fact that it is 2025 and they don't already have all these processes completely streamlined, like, okay, we need to do bus stops, and instantaneously it's not just complete. Like, the bloat is insane. It's a bus shade that also lights up at night as a 3-month pilot project. The GEAP and actual construction were funded by a private grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. It would not say how much grant funding it received. Why not? How much money did you get for this? Come on. Leo Sabrita, entirely grant funded at no cost to the taxpayer, is not a replacement for critical investments that we need in more bus shelters and street lighting. I have an idea. How about we just take all the money that was in this foundation and we use it for, you know, building up the city's infrastructure? How about that? Instead of having 8 fucking dumb gender meetings, how about we just build fucking streetlights? This is the type of shit. Like, okay, so this is a multi-month design process in Los Angeles. This is a multi-month design process in China. This is a railway station. It's just being completed. The one thing you will notice is there isn't a whole cluster of homeless people hiding for any amount of shelter from the weather, because guess what? 90% of Chinese people own their own home. 70% of Chinese millennials own their own home. That was the entrance dome. This is the main hall. Okay, cool. I love internet. All these skylights. Look at that. This is the waiting hall. Has any, like, can anything like this be built in America? This is only $1 billion. In America, this is what we consider public transit. Pathetic. All right, now it's time to make fun of Ethan Klein. Could you imagine spending $1 billion in a new railway station and actually having it completed?
Devolves into disaster.
Socialism is bad because socialism is tyranny. What have I ever done except get hundreds of millions of people killed?
The whole point of that video was to refute the idea that socialism always leads to disaster and tyranny. I also went on to show how capitalism, due to its very design with its constant need for profits and expansion at the expense of human well-being, has led to dictatorship and catastrophe many, many times. So in this video, I want to do two things that I didn't have time for in the last one. One, talk a little more about past socialist projects that have a bad reputation among certain crowds like the USSR, China, and so on, and add a bit more context as to why some autocratic and undesirable deficiencies emerged in them, and two, go over some of the many socialist projects that didn't turn into what Mr. H3 could call a disaster. Unless,
by the way, if you think China's a disaster, then the word disaster means nothing. If you're talking about people that starved in the Great Leap Forward, there was a non-stop cycle of Chinese famines for 1,000 fucking years that killed far more people than died under Mao. It was the Chinese Communist Party that ended the cycle of famine. Like, you could just look at list of famines in China. Look at this. 6 million dead in the 1333 famine. 2 million dead in the Chunzhen drought, leading to the collapse of the Ming Dynasty. 11 million died in the 1810 flood. 45 million population decrease in the 1846 famine, with 15 million dead. 8 million died in the 1857 famine. 30 million people died in the 1851 to 1873 famine. The Northern Chinese famine of 1876 killed 13 million. 25 million died in the Chinese famine of 1906 to 1907 under capitalism. 10 million died in the Chinese famine of 1929. I'm sorry, 1928 to 1930. That was another 10 million under capitalism. 5 million died in the the famine of 1936. And like the Great Chinese Famine, the Great Leap Forward, they say 15 million died. Look how many more died in the Chinese famine of 1906. 55 million by the way is not true. But guess what? There's no more. Wow, look at all these famines. And then the Chinese Communist Party develops the country and there's no more. They had a bad famine. Floods, droughts, typhoons, and an insect invasion. Oh, that means communism is invalid, guys. Oh wait, there's no more. Weird. There was plenty of modern technology in 1930 when 10 million died, but that was under capitalism, so that doesn't count.
Tsarist Russia was a countries like. When you hear the term to do with socialism and a lot more to do with protecting capital and Western business interests. So let's do that now. When you hear the term socialism, I doubt you immediately think of the definition, social ownership of the means of production, and what exactly that even means. Your mind probably just instinctively jumps to countries like Cuba, the USSR, China, and so forth. Now, the debate, even amongst leftists, on whether or not some of these countries constitute socialism rages on. We won't entertain that right now. But what we can say for certain is that all of these countries prior to their revolutions were much worse off. In Cuba, the US-backed right-wing dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista prioritized American business interests as his regime was responsible for wicked human rights abuses in the form of mass murders and torture. Tsarist Russia was a semi-feudal backwater filled with misery and destitution, and same goes for China. I'll let Dr. Parenti give you a glimpse into the state of China prior to the rise of the Communist Party.
When the communists liberated Shanghai from the US-sponsored Kuomintang reactionary government in 1949, the communists found that about 20% of the population in Shanghai, 1.2 million people, were drug addicts. And every morning, special crews of street cleaners, quote, would gather up the corpses of children and adults who had been murdered during the night or died of disease, cold, and starvation.
Disaster, Ethan, is what these countries had prior to socialism. After each country had its revolution, the usage of the land, labor, and capital was reorganized in a way to suit the interests of the vast majority of the people, and not just a small elite. This doesn't mean that these societies shouldn't be criticized. They were far from perfect, and if you're familiar with my channel, you would know that I criticize them a lot, and I urge people not to glorify the more autocratic deficiencies that later emerged in them. But I also urge people to look at the entire picture and Try to understand what happened instead of just brushing them off as either good or bad, as if forcing a country into that sort of reductive moral binary and then refusing to explore any further is productive in any way. There is a conversation to be had about how some of these societies went on to take a more authoritarian form. I personally am not a fan of hyper-centralized authority for prolonged periods of time because I think it could lead to some undesirable outcomes, but we need to examine why some of these socialist projects felt the need to centralize authority in such a way to begin with. In every socialist society, the one thing that was a constant, the thing they could all assure would be soon to greet them if their revolutions were successful, was attack and animosity from capitalist nations. This took the form of invasions, bombing, embargoes, sanctions, assassination attempts, and more. This constant bombardment from external threats breeds paranoia and autocracy. It causes power to centralize, dissent to be taken much more seriously, and sometimes viewed as an existential threat. This leads to unideal outcomes. But I have a hard time seeing how this has anything to do with socialism as a theory. It seems to be the result of being under constant attack. If we look at Russia post-revolution, when a multitude of Western nations invaded the country and sided with the White Army to fight against the communists in the Russian Civil War, we can start to understand why paranoia was rampant in the USSR right from the jump. If we shift our focus over to different kinds of socialist experiments, ones that are often referred to as democratic socialist projects where leaders and parties rose to power through peaceful and electoral means while maintaining a free and open press as well as encouraging opposing political parties, which is what I advocate for, by the way. We can see how quickly they were infiltrated by the capitalist powers of the world, specifically the US. From Allende in Chile to Arbenz in Guatemala, both men were democratically elected, and it didn't take long for the US to spend millions of dollars infiltrating their media, supporting reactionary elements within their militaries, and ultimately overthrowing them both. We now begin to understand the unfortunate and undesirable decisions made by the likes of...
Yeah, see, if a left-wing government is strong enough to resist the United States, it's authoritarian. And if the United States overthrows your government, well, I guess democracy isn't that important after all. And they'll have a military dictatorship where they kill all the leftists to make sure they don't get in power again for a while.
Fidel Castro, when he decided that a free press, while being under attack by the US, would be a death wish. I don't even advocate for the specifics found in some of these past projects. I champion more of a bottom-up approach. But to paint these past societies as disasters without understanding what they were up against, what they replaced, and without mentioning the millions of lives that were improved because of them, is ahistorical. This leads me to the main point of this video. Why is it when the average apolitical person is confronted with the term socialism, they immediately think of states like the USSR and North Korea, but rarely Salvador Allende's Chile? And the reason for that is simple. The former, states like the USSR, came to power via revolution and were heavily propagandized for decades, partly due to
it's because the USSR actually represented a threat to the United States of America and was a challenge to global hegemony, right? Whereas Allende wasn't.
The fact that they survived the initial attack by capitalist forces. The latter, states like Chile, implemented socialism democratically and through electoral means. They weren't hyper-militant, the Americans overthrew them quickly, and there was no need for the US to spend decades filling our heads with Red Scare propaganda about them. Put simply, it's survivorship bias. We remember the countries that survived being attacked by the West, but as a result of them surviving the onslaught, paranoia and autocracy began to rear their ugly heads within those countries. It's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So with that out of the way, and to show Ethan the range and variety of past socialist experiments...
Well, the other thing is, like, they also recapitulate, they basically reframe previous socialist experiments that didn't achieve full socialism as if they were liberal, right? And MLs do this too, which is very stupid. And that's the main reason I don't identify as an ML. Like, for example, if a socialist party comes in and does, co-determination and sectoral bargaining and high taxes on the wealth and, highly redistributive social safety net and, nationalized businesses and all this shit that is not full socialism when we've completely deleted the capitalist class. We haven't achieved a full proletarian dictatorship. MLs will be like, aha, that's just liberal capitalism. As opposed to saying, like, wow, the states that run the best are the ones that had socialist governments that did a whole bunch of fucking redistribution in government capacity and state capacity. And then they didn't achieve all their final goals of transitioning out of capitalism. So now that just becomes recapitulated as liberalism. And it's like, no, that's not why that exists. The model does not, like, Norway isn't Norway because capitalists decided to be nice one day.
For the remainder of this video, we will quickly look at some socialist projects that improved the quality of life for the vast majority of people and did not turn into what he could consider a disaster. So let's do that. I put these examples of socialist projects in the honorable mentions category, not because they were unimpressive, but because I've already gone over them many times on this channel. So I want to quickly run through them for those
What do
who
I mean? Recapitulated as liberalism? Like basically you just go like, oh, see, I think I like the Nordic model, which is capitalism with a welfare state, right? And there is validity to that argument that it is capitalism with a robust welfare state, but that doesn't actually explain the political hows of why that exists. And I also don't think of the Nordic model as the end state, but I think as the Nordic model as superior to what we have, right? Like more desirable to live in the Nordic model than it is to live in American hypercapitalism, right? So if something is better objectively by measuring human flourishing, you go, okay, then we should implement that if we can. I'm not saying that's the final end state, but it's stupid to be like, you know, free healthcare and free housing and cheap childcare and you know, high taxes on the wealthy and you know, expansive social welfare state and state-owned enterprise. That's not full communism. Therefore, it's liberalism. Is silly unless you already have that. In which case, you're right. If you're sitting in those states, maintaining the status quo is liberalism. That would not be socialist. If you're a status quo person in Norway, you are not a left-winger. That's right. That's right. But if you are saying, hey, we should implement some of this shit that they already have over in Norway, in America, that makes you to the left of the status quo. Now, if we get that shit, if somehow we implemented a whole bunch of those programs that they have in Norway, and then you said, oh, that's job here is done, now I defend the status quo, then yes, you would be a liberal. And I think this is kind of the issue is people are very interested in a type of politics that doesn't seem relevant to what's going on. And I will say this. If America ever had like a revolutionary moment, right, where there's a revolution happening and people are trying to implement like full-blown socialism through revolution, I would be in favor of those people. If they were like a substantively like serious threat to the status quo, I would 100% be behind the revolutionaries, and I would abandon any of my like electoral or other, you know, social democratic proposals instantly. The only reason why I support social democratic proposals as they are currently in the United States is because I don't see that revolutionary moment currently happening. But if that revolutionary moment did happen, then I would abandon any kind of like reformist or social democratic policy in favor of revolution. I'm just interacting with the world as it is now and trying to make improvements by any means necessary. And I think that's exactly how you should look at politics. But isn't that just SocDem stuff? SocDems, I think Wikipedia explains it the best. So people like literally, I think at this point, just even having a level of understanding of social democracy that you get from Wikipedia is better than 99% of people talking about social democracy. Social democracy is a social, economic, and political philosophy within socialism that supports political and economic democracy and a gradualist, reformist, and democratic approach toward achieving social equality. AKA the Social Democrats, and by the way, in the past, social democracy stretched back to the 19th century labor movement, originally a catch-all term for socialists of varying tendencies. After the Russian Revolution, it came to refer to reformist socialists that were opposed to the authoritarian and centralized Soviet model of socialism. Now, personally, this is out of date. Who gives a shit? This is out of date. You're having conversations about political environment that doesn't exist anymore. Stop having these stupid fucking arguments anymore. The Soviet Union isn't there anymore.
May be new to my videos, starting with Salvador Allende of Chile. This topic in particular I've covered many times. If you want an in-depth video about Allende and the Chilean road to socialism, check out this video of mine. But to briefly recap, prior to Allende, much of Chile's industry and resources were owned by foreign corporations. From copper mines to the telecommunications industry, American businesses soaked up plenty of Chilean wealth, while many Chileans lived in poverty. This was and still is a common arrangement in many areas in the developing world. Rich Western corporations will buy up the natural resources, exploit the local labor forces, and if the people of the exploited nation decide to fight back, either through revolution or by electoralism, Western governments governments, acting in partnership with their business interests, will install a fascist dictator to protect their profits. This little arrangement tends to benefit two groups: the Western business interests, who siphon the wealth away from these poorer countries, and the local elite of these poorer countries, who make up a small percentage of the population and tend to benefit from their alliance with these Western capitalists. In 1970, Salvador Allende was legally and constitutionally elected, and he vowed to take back Chilean resources and industry to help develop the country and pull people out of poverty. He referred to his ambitions as the Chilean road to socialism, where he would bring about those ends by respecting the democratic and constitutional integrity of Chile. This immediately pissed off the Americans, who had spent years trying to convince people that socialism and democracy were mutually exclusive. By the end of Allende's first year, he had nationalized over 150 enterprises and loosened the Americans' grip over his country. He had an impressive first year and a half, and to back up that statement, I will use my favorite Marxist source, the CIA. Allende's economy saw an 8.5% jump in GDP, a lower rate of inflation compared to his predecessor, the lowest unemployment rate in a decade, a sharp boost in real wages for Chile's lower classes, leading to a consumer buying spree that boosted manufacturing output by 12%, and an additional 12% boost in construction activity, leading to a decline of the unemployment rate in the Santiago area from 8.3% to 3.8%. Now, to you and I, this seems like a good thing. People are enjoying rising living standards, and foreign exploitation is screeching to a halt, but for the Americans and the Chilean conservative elite, this was really bad news. The CIA began funding right-wing opposition in Chile. They gave over $1 million to El Mercurio, an anti-Allende conservative media outlet. Nixon gave the order to make the economy scream when referring to what he wanted done to Allende's Chile. The Chilean right-wing and business owners engaged in attempts to sabotage the economy by withholding their goods and refusing to sell them, which led to artificial scarcity. The US established an economic blockade. It used its influence to cut international and bilateral aid and private credit to Chile, prevented Allende from being able to renegotiate the national debt that he had inherited from his predecessor, and so much more. Long story short, the right-wing Chilean military, taking advantage of the US's work in destabilizing Allende, bombed the presidential palace and overthrew the government. Allende lost his life that day, and Chile fell to the dictatorial rule of Augusto Pinochet, who spent the coming decades torturing, murdering, kidnapping, and terrorizing Chileans while protecting American business interests in the country. So I guess in a roundabout way, this did lead to disaster, but not because of socialism, but because of the overthrow of socialism and the replacement of Allende with a tyrant who would protect U.S. business interests. In addition to Allende's Chile, Thomas Sankara's legacy in Burkina Faso is worth looking at as well. And yes, I apologize, this image is computer generated, very cringe of me, but there are just 0 public domain images of my guy Thomas, so I guess this is what we're gonna have to do. Burkina Faso was originally a French colony called Upper Volta. Like many other colonized lands, it suffered the usual burdens of colonialism and exploitation. It was severely destitute, prone to famines, the labor force was exploited by France, gender discrimination was rampant, and the overall quality of life was horrendous. We should all know by now that colonialism is a form of violence that breeds resistance, and in the case of Upper Volta, the Marxist revolutionary Thomas Sankara is who it bred. He came to power in 1983 and immediately got to work. He fought against gender discrimination by ending forced marriages and female genital mutilation. He launched healthcare, literacy, and vaccination campaigns, land reform and nationalization programs. He focused on infrastructure, combated desertification by planting millions of trees, dramatically lowered the infant mortality rate, and he fought effectively against hunger. So effectively that Jean Ziegler of the UN declared, Thomas Sankara has conquered hunger. Burkina Faso, in 4 years, has become food self-sufficient. This is notable considering Burkina Faso's history with famines and food scarcity. Sankara also refused to play ball with the IMF, an institution that has a history of predatory lending practices known to worsen conditions of already poor countries and open up their economies for Western exploitation. All of this is not to say that Sankara never made mistakes or that he was some kind of god amongst men. He himself would hate that description, as he openly criticized personality cults and he didn't allow for statues to be built in his image, but he absolutely sacrificed all he could for the people of his country. He even refused to take a presidential salary because his priority was helping the citizenry above all else. This completely contradicts the stereotypical socialist fat cat who lives in luxury while his people starve, the kind of Western caricature that we've been programmed to believe. Sankara, like Allende, shouldn't really be touched on as a footnote and deserves his own full video, but for the sake of brevity, he too was eventually overthrown in a coup, and Burkina Faso immediately began to regress in his absence.
Well, see, the thing is, like, somebody like Ethan Klein would just say it's because they are racially inferior. Like, Africans don't know how to govern themselves. Like, you know, that's what, you know, it's the same way they react to something like people say we should have a one-state solution in Palestine, right? Where Israelis and Palestinians live side by side as equals. Somebody like Ethan Klein would just say, well, then that would be a genocide of all the Israeli Jews. You can't trust. You need the walls to go up. That's the only thing that makes us safe. So it is like they don't, again, they don't give a shit about these arguments. Yeah, the West is trying to overthrow him right now.
Bolivia,
Yeah, exactly.
like other Latin
I know.
American countries, still feels the burdens of colonialism, even to this day. The way the land and resources are divided up in many of these countries largely continues colonial landholding practices where a small group of white elites, descendants of European colonizers, hold the majority of the land while indigenous populations live in poverty. In addition to land and resources being controlled by a small ruling elite, they are also bought up and hoarded by foreign corporations, further exacerbating inequality. These conditions gave rise to many leftist Latin American movements that aimed to reclaim their land and resources from foreign influence, kick out the Western imperialists, and use their country's natural wealth to serve the vast majority of their populations, not just a small ruling class. In addition to all this, in the 80s and 90s, Bolivia was subjected to neoliberal policies as a result of them taking on World Bank and IMF loans. I've touched on this phenomenon earlier in this video, but the IMF, World Bank, and other international financial institutions push developing countries to take out predatory loans. The goal is to entrap these countries in debt. Once they're in debt, the IMF or the World Bank forces them to abide by specific loan conditionalities and adopt policies that serve to enrich Western capitalist interests at the expense of the poor, indebted nation. I have a whole video on this topic if you want to learn more. In the case of Bolivia, they were subjected to intense privatizations where Western interests bought up their shit and benefited from the wealth generated by it. The World Bank even forced Bolivia to privatize the goddamn water supply and sell it off to a consortium led by Bechtel, a U.S. corporation. This led to an increase in the price of water that many families couldn't afford, and since the private sector tends to follow profit and not human well-being, poorer areas were subjected to poor quality services. To quote Frederick Gordon's Freshwater Resources and Interstate Cooperation, the privatization of Bolivia's water supply eliminated any guarantee of water distribution to rural areas. This resulted in only half of Cochabamba's population being connected to the central water system. The law also prohibited the peasants from constructing collection tanks to gather rainwater. Law 2029 required people to ask the water superintendent for permission to collect rainwater. These goddamn capitalists think they own the fucking clouds. In addition to water, oil and other natural resources were also privatized and therefore could not be efficiently used to serve the Bolivian population. Something needed to change. This led to the rise of a man named Evo Morales and his movement toward socialism, or MAS, party. Morales assumed the presidency in 2006 and he was the first indigenous president of the country. This was a big deal considering Bolivia's history with racism. His ascension to the presidency reflected the end of a particular Andean form of apartheid that had marginalized the majority indigenous population since the Spanish conquest, as author Benjamin Cole put it. Morales quickly got to work writing a new Bolivian constitution that served everyone, not just the ruling class. In compliance with socialist principles of participatory democracy, he called on the indigenous population to help draft the constitution. As Arnold August said, people writing their own constitution and ratifying it in a popular referendum is one of the hallmarks of a democracy. Prior to Morales' presidency, foreign corporations had significant control over Bolivia's oil and gas, extracting hefty profits while the country didn't get to benefit from its own natural wealth. Morales changed this. He brought the hydrocarbon sector under state control and renegotiated contracts with the foreign companies, forcing them into positions where they had to strike a deal that would serve the Bolivian people or get kicked out of the country completely. This allowed for Morales to use Bolivian oil revenues to fund social programs, development, and improve the lives of the many, all while remaining firm in his critique of neoliberalism and his desire to shift towards socialism. He redistributed about 130 million acres of land from state or private ownership to indigenous families, many of whom had historically been forced into sharecropping or slavery. He grew the country's GDP by about 4.8% a year, halved the amount of people living in extreme poverty, leading to the World Bank changing Bolivia's classification from low income to lower middle income. He funded schools, hospitals, and infrastructure programs with the funds generated by the hydrocarbon sector that was now actually serving the people and not just the rich, raised the minimum wage, and much, much more. By 2012, Morales helped 1 million Bolivians escape poverty.
We're talking about that accident. They didn't release it. There was an accident. It wasn't like they were like, haha, we're going to poison this river. There was a major accident, which, you know, happens. The reality is, how is there a response to an accident? How do they change what they did to make it, to restore what was done, can be restored, to clean up the mess and ensure that such an accident doesn't happen again?
Like the many other instances of democratically elected socialist governments, Morales' story doesn't have a happy ending. U.S. intervention paired with...
By the way, he was extremely successful. Bolivia it was the fastest growing economy in Latin America. I don't know if he mentioned that. Hold on, let me back it up. I missed it. I was looking at something else.
That had marginalized the majority indigenous population since the Spanish conquest, as author Benjamin Cole put it. Morales quickly got to work writing a new Bolivian constitution that served everyone, not just the ruling class. In compliance with socialist principles of participatory democracy, he called on the indigenous population to help draft the constitution. As Arnold August said, people writing their own constitution and ratifying it in a popular referendum is one of the hallmarks of a democracy. Prior to Morales' presidency, foreign corporations had significant control over Bolivia's oil and gas, extracting hefty profits while the country didn't get to benefit from its own natural wealth. Morales changed this. He brought the hydrocarbon sector under state control and renegotiated contracts with the foreign companies, forcing them into positions where they had to strike a deal that would serve the Bolivian people or get kicked out of the country completely. This allowed for Morales to use Bolivian oil revenues to fund social programs, development, and improve the lives of the many, all while remaining firm in his critique of neoliberalism and his desire to shift towards socialism. He redistributed about 130 million acres of land from state or private ownership to indigenous families, many of whom had historically been forced into sharecropping or slavery. He grew the country's GDP by about 4.8% a year, halved the amount of people living in extreme poverty, leading to the World Bank changing Bolivia's classification from low income to lower middle income. He funded schools, hospitals, and infrastructure programs with the funds generated by the hydrocarbon sector that was now actually serving the people and not just the rich, raised the minimum wage, and much, much more. By 2012, Morales helped 1 million Bolivians escape poverty. Unfortunately, like the many other instances of democratically elected socialist governments, Morales' story doesn't have a happy ending. U.S. intervention paired with a growing right-wing movement in Bolivia made for hard times to come. As Morales was running again for his fourth term...
This is the China Caduno wrong zone. No, when an accident, an environmental and industrial accident occurs, there's a difference between an accident and an intentional release. And accidents happen with industrial processes. The question is, how is their response? Is there a regulatory response? Is there cleanup? Is there compensation? That's just part of an industrial society. You're going to have accidents. They happen all the time. In every country that has an industry, accidents happen. Now, how is that responded to is what tells you the nature of the institutions.
Term, which in my opinion, he shouldn't have done. It would have made more sense to pass the reins off to a younger MAS member. The election results stopped updating. Once they resumed updating, Morales' lead had grown as rural votes were counted. This caused his opposition to accuse him of fraud, and the Organization of American States claimed that the election showed signs of irregularities. However, later independent studies, including by the Center for Economic and Policy Research, found no statistical evidence of fraud, and multiple experts accused the OAS of using flawed methodology and dishonesty. The OAS then went on to request that Morales redo the election, and he agreed, saying it was no problem. But before the election took place, the conservative military forced him to step down and flee the country. Make no mistake, this was a military coup. He was replaced by Janine Áñez, who assumed power unconstitutionally. Áñez was a deranged right-winger who went on to massacre Morales'
Not only that, she was literally like the most far-right party that had like no support, but yet the United States stood behind her as the leader.
In the aftermath of his overthrow, leading Bolivia to charge her with genocide. So again, I guess there was a bit of a disaster that took place here, but it wasn't socialism, it was getting rid of socialism. Aside from the projects mentioned so far in this video, it is worth highlighting a few other socialist projects whose achievements seem to get swept under the rug. From the success of Slovenia, which came from very humble beginnings only to become a wealthy nation while maintaining its unique market socialist model, to the Indian state of Kerala, which of course is still forced to work within the confines of the Indian constitution, but nonetheless has done their best to build a democratic socialist project that ushered the state into an era of high human development, a thriving worker cooperative sector, near universal literacy, an increased lifespan, one of the lowest mortality rates in India, and an overall improvement in the quality of life. We begin to see that it's unfair to brush off socialism as an ideology that only ever leads to misery. It erases the stories of the millions of people whose lives were improved because of it. Alright, well, it would be nice for Mr. H3 to stumble across this video.
He doesn't give a shit,
and if
man.
he has any
doesn't care. He's a wealthy fucking millionaire Zionist from Beverly Hills. But the video is good. I like this guy. This guy has a really cool voice as well. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today on the Central Committee stream. I really do appreciate you. I'm going to send you guys, gals, non-binary pals, to our friend over at Yogopnik Twitch. Thank you so much. We didn't get to all I wanted to cover today because that article came out of nowhere and we covered that instead. But we're going to be covering more of the Ethan Klein shit tomorrow, the DEMS response. He just made a fake video about her again. What a complete fucking dipshit. What a complete scumbag. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow. And, you know, remember, here's all my links. I'm tired. I'll see you all tomorrow.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no rights. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. Listening to Mike from PA unites the world in song. So comrades, come and rally, for this is the time and place. Join the Central Committee and unite the human race. Break down the billionaire system. Bring down the bourgeoisie. To see the end of capitalism, we must set Luigi free. Demand that health care be provided, as well as housing and food security. We'll build high-speed rails and revolutions with heads of billionaires and solidarity. So come, brothers and sisters, through this struggle we'll carry on. A gift up to Central Committee is one step closer to righting the wrong.